That was either Dr. or Dr. Crampton. Who was it?
That was,
Okay, yeah.
yeah. Hello, dear listener. Welcome to People We Know, a podcast for my friends and family about my friends and family. Today's friend is my friend Brandon, and we're talking about musicology, which he is qualified to talk about because he has an undergrad BA in music with musicological emphasis and is now a PhD student in musicology. Although, according to him, that doesn't mean anything at all because he says he's still going to have to help prepare for the interview. Brandon is a Texas based musician, and according to himself, he has no real talent other than listening to, critiquing, and yapping about music. He likes all kinds of different music, but he says, to be honest, not as much as the kinds of people that tend to say they like all kinds of music. These days, primarily, he's listening to classical music, but he's been bumping Lady Gaga's Chromatica on repeat lately. And I'm going to share with you the opening paragraph of his current work, Hill Country Gay Boy, because I just think it's beautiful. He would want you to know that it's a rough draft and blah, blah, blah. It's not done yet, whatever. I want you to know that I think it's really nice and good. And here it goes. I have never come out to anyone, but not for the reasons one may think. Virtually all my friends and family know. Indeed, throughout my whole life, people have always seemed to know my sexual orientation before I did. Aiming for the day when we no longer must preface our genital enthusiasms to the world at large, I have often dropped the boyfriend bomb, perhaps nervously, but still unapologetically, and hoped for the best. Undoubtedly, my privileges of being a cisgender white male have aided me in this regard. For as long as I have known, I have possessed a mysteriously innate and unwavering raison d'etre, that my sexuality, and moreover my entire existence, is not accidental. That somehow my puny self is accounted for in the makeup of our universe's fabric, that everything in life is equally insignificant, and that yet somehow, because of this, everything is equally significant. And that my life's work is simply to live out my own ever-evolving truth. As one can imagine, I was a very emotional child, for a boy, anyway, and the subject of much bullying. I grew into adolescence with a plethora of these quasi-spiritual resolutions, one of which was perhaps a bit more stubborn than the rest. I had vowed to never give anyone the satisfaction of my vulnerable coming out. Hi, Brandon.
Hi, Sally.
Um,
How are you?
how's it going? I'm good. I'm
Good.
good. I just had some Indian food, and
Oh,
yeah, it was
how,
very delicious.
I'm sure Indian food fucking slaps. How is that sitting, though?
It's right in my sternum at the moment, but
Mm.
it feels kind of good, honestly.
It's giving me heartburn, but I like it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It doesn't feel like horrible heartburn. It's just kind of warm,
Wait, okay,
you know?
this is not a
Heart
dig.
simmer.
Um, but is that the only Indian place in Boone?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
It is
I figured.
one of the only like ethnic places in Boone.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about
There's
this with me.
yeah. It
Yeah.
is delicious.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Um yeah. Did you have dinner?
I have not had dinner. I just had two tiramisu flavor Oreos, and
Oh
that
hell yeah.
they're so good. They don't really taste like tiramisu, and I think that's why they're good.
I love it. You're such a sweet tooth. It's so
I
sweet.
do have a sweet tooth. It's because I'm a bitch otherwise, and it balances it out. That's been my theory
You
for
are
a long
not.
time now. No, I am. I am.
Okay,
Um,
well,
you're like,
bitch.
well, I'm a little feisty guy, and my medicine is sweet.
Aw, that's really cute.
It
What
is.
is your favorite book?
That's,
Really smooth.
that's a beautiful segue. Um, you
I'm still
already
new.
you already know what my favorite book is because I got you to read my favorite book.
You
Apparently,
did.
I didn't
You
even know that
did.
I had that effect on people.
Oh yeah.
Well, okay, for starters, I want to make it known that I don't be reading like that these days. I read a
Mm,
lot, but it's for class. It's all academic shit.
mm.
Um, just I have an ever-growing bibliography of things that I need to get to for my career and my own academic writing. Um, and that is enough reading to make me not want to read when I do have free time. So I have not read for fun in a couple years.
That is
Um,
so fair.
yeah, it's a little sad because I grew up loving reading. I always won like the top reader award, shit like that, like in elementary
Oh,
school.
that's so cute.
I always had like the most reading points and like we called it,
Oh.
but yeah, I'm not on that anymore. So I just wanted that's a little just had to preface with that. My
Mm-hmm.
favorite book is The Count of Monte Cristo. It was
Period.
it's just so good. It was my summer reading assignment going into high school from 8th grade. Um
Mm-hmm.
we
Damn.
Yes, they never assigned it again after that year. It was like the
Yeah.
first and only year that they assigned
I
it.
bet you nobody read that shit. That
Nobody,
is a long ass book.
it is really long. It took me all summer. And that was with being interested in it. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
it
it took
was
me a while too.
hard. It was a hard read too. I mean, we did the abridged version, so shorter and a little
Mm-hmm.
bit easier, but for like a 14-year-old, that was
Yeah.
because it's a is it technically a period piece? I think it's a period piece, right? It's from the 19th century. So it's a little fluffy. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's translated on top of that, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I
I
fell
will
in
say
love
I
with it.
hated the ending.
You didn't
I
like
did
the
not like the end. Okay, spoiler.
I was going to say, do
Skip
we do
ahead.
spoilers? It was like 200
Skip
years
ahead.
ago.
Okay, look, this is a really good book and it's really epic, and if you like epic tales and revenge and stuff, you should read it. So, skip ahead like 1 minute, I
Mhm,
guess.
mhm.
To me, the whole book was like the draw was reuniting with Mercedes.
Yes.
And then he didn't end up with her at the end. He ended up with his 17-year-old sex slave.
He did, didn't he?
He sure did! And that was not my favorite thing.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I remember the ending more being more about not actually him, but him teaching a lesson to who was it? Who was not
Maximilian?
yes, and Valentine was it?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes,
Something like
yes.
that.
I thought that was kind of sweet, although that's kind of a really harsh way to like teach someone, life lesson because he was like hiding her, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maximilian thought she
Valentine.
was dead, and
Yeah.
he,
Oof.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but then he, like, yeah, whatever.
I like that. I totally forgot that he didn't end up with
Yeah.
Mercedes.
I didn't
Yeah.
like that. And, like, I just didn't like that he had a 17-year-old sex slave.
Yeah,
Like,
none of that ever was like crossed my mind. None of that ever raised a red flag at age 14. So I
yeah.
should
I guess
really
you're,
go
like,
back and read.
17's old.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't think it was well, okay, so I know that it's problematic in certain regards, just as like anything that dated is going to
Oh,
be.
yeah.
But I that's part of why I still like it and I still say it's my favorite book today, because I think it's just really funny. It's almost campy, but obviously it wasn't trying
Yeah.
for that at the time. But it's just so dramatic. A couple summers back, I actually tried rereading it. I didn't give myself enough time to reread it before the summer was over and classes started. So I think I only read like the first, I don't know, quarter of it, and then I didn't finish it. But it was different reading it as what I was 21 at the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because everything is like so much more. ridiculous. Uh,
Yeah.
because at 14, I think I took everything kind of seriously about it, but
Mm.
I don't,
Yeah. You're like, this is a school book.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But like as an adult, you're reading one page and he's like, um, I don't know. I am going to jail. They have found me. Like, damn he who betrayed me. And then the next page will be like, I've been in this cell for 40 years now. And
Oh, well, see, that's the abridged version.
that no, yeah, you're right. You're right. Um, but
But that is funny.
it is funny. It's just like for a
He
book,
does, I guess he does do that too.
it goes really well. The pacing is just is funny, I think.
It is, yeah.
Uh, yeah, I guess that is the abridged aspect of it. I never even realized that. You're right.
Well,
Um,
I also really like when he comes back and like he's in like different disguises.
yes.
Well,
Uh-huh.
I just like that, but I also like how they never say like it's Dantes, like the main
Yeah,
character.
yeah, yeah.
They just like describes him and you're familiar with the way he's described and you're like, "Oh my God, that's my boy."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's
Um,
so good. I remember realizing that for the first time, and that blew my eighth grade, almost ninth grade brain. I was like,
yeah.
yeah.
It blew my 22-year-old brain or 23. I
It's
don't remember.
good. It's really good. I liked the Venice chapters when they're in Carnival.
Mhm. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's just so adventurous. I love a good adventure story. Very
It's
dramatic.
satisfying too.
Um, Apparently they just came out with a
Yeah, a
movie.
movie.
Yeah, a
I
friend
watched like
like
a little bit of it. And apparently there's an older movie. Like
I've heard the
my
older
cousin was
movie's
telling me about
not
it.
good and to not
Oh.
watch it if you like the book. Yeah, but
Okay.
something came out
I've heard
last
actually
year.
I heard the older movie fixes the ending that I don't like.
Oh,
Like they do end up together.
okay. I'm all
So,
for movies changing the story to be more in line or just to be in line with like modern morals and ethics.
okay.
Yeah, so maybe I would like that older film as well, if it's less problematic with its ending. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no reason why an old dude should be preying on a 17-year-old. Um,
Well, yeah, that and just like to me like the whole book is like he's about to marry this girl and then he goes to jail and then he like she's like the only thing he's living for
mhm.
and also revenge, I guess. And he like the entire book he's like looking for her and like building up his life to like impress her in my opinion. And then like they meet up and they kind of just like don't do anything. And I'm like, "What?" I was like waiting for this to be like an epic, I don't know. Maybe I'm just romantic.
No, I mean, I think that would have been a great ending. I also think that probably why it was a big hit. I assume the book was a big hit at the time was because it wasn't like a fairy tale ending. It's like all
mm,
this work, a whole life's commitment to this, and then it doesn't give you that satisfaction at the end. And that is like you could probably argue that that's like the most painful part of like the whole book
yeah.
after everything. That dude was literally in
Yeah.
jail. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was yeah.
It's kind
Makes I
of
mean, yeah.
it's kind of La La Land a little bit. They don't
See, but I hated
end
that
up
ending
together.
too.
Yeah, yeah, that's just kind of the
I'm like,
first thing
just
that
make them kiss.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like they're obviously still into each other at the end, but it's just not the way the cookie is crumbling at that moment.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a great book though. It's so good.
Yeah.
I need to
It
watch that
is.
movie because it has really high ratings and it's a French film itself, which gives me
Yes.
hope that they do their own story justice.
Yeah, I
Um,
would hope.
who knows?
So, what are we talking about
So
today?
today
Besides the Count of Monte Cristo.
we're not talking about Count of Monte Cristo today, actually.
Hmm.
We're talking about musicology, all things music academia.
Work.
Mhm.
And what is musicology?
Um, okay, so musicology is the study of music academically. So,
Beautiful. Roll
n-
credits.
yeah, not the end. Um, it is not the musical study of music. So like taking lessons or practicing. It's not that kind of study. It is prosaic, academic. It's in the humanities. At a lot of universities, increasingly in the country, musicology is no longer housed in schools of music. Um,
Oh.
and they're just kind of in whatever other department on campus houses humanities, so history or gender studies or any of that is where musicology proper is found. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I'd say the majority of universities musicology is still like the physical classrooms are in schools of music. So,
Hmm.
we're learning about, I'm taking my musicology classes, and then, the classroom right next to me might be a bunch of like, like brass methods or something. So, um, yeah, so
Ain't that always the way?
it's kind of
Somehow
beautiful.
in music school, like, you're always going to be right next to a brass methods class or like trumpet studio.
Yeah,
And you're going to be talking about something deep and it's going to be like,
yeah, there's just
I
cracked
literally had
notes.
that experience yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah. Oh man, we were talking about music therapy and hospice care, and the room next to us was trumpets, like warming up, like. Anyway,
It's
do you
it
think UT is headed there though? Like, do you think?
no.
Because our music building is very old and nasty.
Um, Nastier than B-Song, you think?
No, no, I'm talking about BSOM, I guess,
Oh,
as
okay.
our.
Okay. I thought you were
No.
talking about okay, I see. Yes, no, yeah, B-Song's gross. No, I don't think it will ever change. Um, Here
Okay.
anyways, just because funding, I mean, the funding thing in Texas, funding for the arts is um so hard and so
Hmm.
little, at least compared to the uh University of Texas football stadium that is right next to the School of Music and has like, I don't know, like LED lockers and all kinds of crazy shit for the football
Like
players. So,
fireworks, yeah.
UT, since you graduated and left, actually, there's now a drone show. We have a drone show.
Oh my god,
It is
beautiful.
crazy. It actually is stunning. It is really beautiful. I hate it. I hate that my money went to that, but it is beautiful.
Oh man. Oh man. They also have like the people who parachute in like during the football games.
Yeah, and the jets, the like the
Yes.
fighter jets.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Very patriotic.
Those wake me up on
Anyway.
Saturdays because I live close enough, and
Oh
they
man.
a jet just keeps on going, so they go over my apartment too, and every
Oh.
Saturday I am woken up by, because I'm not, you cannot find me at the football game. Um
Right. You're not gonna be there.
just to clarify. But
By the way.
yeah. So musicology, the way that I define it is for people um not familiar with like anything kind of in the music world, is that it is music history plus, right?
Mm,
So it is music history is part of musicology, and that makes up a good bulk of what musicology is. but musicology is also music and insert whatever. The study of music and whatever, literally anything. I mean, science, nature, gender studies, critical race theory, psychology, um, literally
Would that
anything.
mean would that mean that music therapy falls under musicology?
You know, I was actually reading the Wikipedia for musicology about 30 minutes ago. And I didn't like really anything from the little blurb at the beginning on like definition
Okay.
wise. I didn't think it did
Okay.
a good job saying what musicology was. But it did say music therapy proper has is sometimes included in musicology, which I have never heard
Hey, oh my
anyone say that. And
god.
I kind of don't like that because I think y'all are so cool and so your own thing that you don't need to be nestled under our bullshit. Like kind of I don't want that for y'all actually. And I've just never heard anyone talk about music therapy in
Mm,
a musicological framework, lens, any of that. I mean, what y'all do is like, in my opinion, like this is very uh pedantic, but y'all do like real shit in the world. Like y'all like actually make people's lives better. Um,
mm,
and what we do is uh theoretically that, but it's from like the comfort of our couch.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. This is something you talked to me a little bit about.
Yes, couch activism
Mm,
is a big critique of our field and a lot of humanities. I mean, if you just think about studying anything to a very high degree. You go all the way up to PhD, DMA, whatever it is, you're at the highest degree in your thing. There's usually a lot of academia involved, and you're writing a lot of papers and whatnot. Um, and while that is good, so that you can be the expert that you are expected to be on whatever your area is, um, I think it's also very comfortable and
hmm
um people don't really go beyond that. And so you can, commit your life to studying XYZ thing. Um and they don't have to be high stakes things. They don't have to be, uh incarceration rates in the US, or it can
hmm
be, something lighthearted like um, Disney music. Like one of my musicology friends is a Disney music scholar. It doesn't have to be
Aw.
serious. But for the things that are more serious, it's just unfortunate that your influence ends when you stop writing or you drop the pen or you close the laptop and then you just kind of continue about your day, even though you know so much about this thing and you could, you know, take one step further, go a little bit above and beyond, and try to apply it in some way, like actually go out into the real world and volunteer or, uh, I don't know, start a startup or,
hmm
at the very least, like vote responsibly, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's that's one of my that's a big critique of musicology and one of my biggest kind of um irks with the field. Granted, I'm like super early on in musicology, so I'm kind of a hypocrite to be like, well, we don't do anything because I also don't do anything. So, but I am like soul searching for those ways that I can apply this like very niche information that I have about the people that I study, and how they're connected to music, and and how I can like sort of give back through my own uh, it, I'm not describing this well. Like
No, you are, I think.
I I hope I am. It's basically I think a lot of people in the humanities, my training is musicology, so I'm thinking a lot of musicologists specifically think that they're being activists by writing on, kind of heavy topics. Um,
Hmm.
but that is
Kind of ends there.
it ends there, and you're kind of full of yourself if you think that writing an article and publishing it in a journal that you have to pay for is going to change the world because the people, very often, the people that we are talking about with music, if we're talking about the music of indigenous people in Peru, okay, bitch,
Hmm.
they are not reading our English article in this journal that you have to subscribe to and pay a yearly subscription to the Society of Ethnomusicology for. Like the you you're not actually doing any activism by writing. You're putting the potential out there because hopefully the idea is that someone will read your work and you'll kind of like change them or open their eyes and then it'll have this trickle down effect. But it does not work
Trickle
that
down famously works.
yeah, it's not that linear, right? Like we know this from history and I don't know.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I actually just signed up for a, a volunteer organization the other day on campus called Outreach, and it's like an LGBTQ plus organization that kind of hosts little volunteer events throughout the year that you can sign up for here and there. And I haven't been to one yet, but that was that's been on my radar. I've been wanting to do that for a few semesters now, and I'm finally
Hmm.
just dedicating time to prioritizing that because it is something that I believe is uh, valuable to my field and my academia as a musicologist that writes mainly on music and gender sexuality studies. It's sort of, I feel called to go beyond my silly little essays that I type on my silly little laptop from my silly little couch. You know what I mean? It's just like knowing your,
Yeah.
like, know your place, like, grow up.
Mm. Well,
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful that you're doing that. I think you're a little bit hard on yourself, but I think that it's maybe good for like people in academic spaces because I feel like it can get very elitist. And I
Yes.
think
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah. Exactly.
being yeah, what's it like um thinking on that a lot, I think is good.
For sure. It's very common today actually in the musicology world to really know your place and your privileges and to really understand that hey, we're all higher education um, educated individuals and that in itself is a privilege. Education is
Hmm.
expensive and hard.
Hmm.
um, so, nothing that we're doing is inherently wrong, but if you don't know um, the privileges that you've been granted in your life, socioeconomically, even demographically, then you might rub people the wrong way.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean that's basically it. It's not saying that everyone has to give back. That's not at all what I'm saying. Or musicologists are saying. It's just the way that I see it specifically is that if I'm going to give up the next 5 years of my life to this PhD that I'm getting, it is a 5 year program, and I'm going to come out of this being an expert on this one really niche thing, and I'm going to know, the history of being queer in the US very well, and I'm going to know, you know, sort of how to conceptualize, specifically the Austin gay scene. It would be unfortunate to not use that information and that training to actually do something good in the Austin gay scene. You know what I mean?
That yeah, that makes total sense.
Right?
I hear
So
you. Yeah.
no one has an obligation to. It's just unfortunate if you choose to not. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. But this is a
Yeah.
terribly like pedantic way to start the conversation of
I
musicology. It really is
don't know.
cute stuff, I promise. It really is not that deep.
It's cute. Oh my God. Well, I know you had some questions for me that we were supposed to start with that I
Yes.
skipped.
Yeah, sorry. It's okay. It's okay. Well, I wanted to ask you, um, because I know your circle is obviously very musical,
Mhm.
at Appalachian State. And so
Mhm.
I imagine a good amount of people listening to this will have musical training of some
Mhm.
kind and can maybe like reverberate with some of these questions. So I just wanted to ask you what you think of the music history sequence that we both took here at UT in undergrads. Like what reverberated with you, what didn't, like how did you perceive the classes? Were they like blow off classes, or did you like them more than music theory? Like, yeah, just what is
I did
your
not like them
experience?
more than more than music theory. Just to get that one, I love music theory, but
Okay, slay.
I know, right? That makes
Yeah.
me feel like cool to say that, but it's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the music history sequence at UT, so I kind of loop it together with music and culture, which is like the first class you take. And I thought about this a little bit, and I have a lot of thoughts. I remember, well, okay, let me just say I took music history on Zoom because it was COVID.
Mm,
So,
mhm,
did I learn much music history? And can you learn things on Zoom? Absolutely, you can. Can you choose to clock out and not learn a damn thing?
mhm.
Absolutely, you can.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what I did because I would say music history was the least interesting like part of our coursework for
Mhm,
me.
mhm,
Um, I remember distinctly one time, I mean, there was definitely interesting parts, and I feel like it just helped me. I learned some stuff, you know.
mhm.
I know the eras, and I can like identify composers, but um, anyway, I remember one time it was like 9:30 a.m. The coronavirus is like devastating the world.
It's not
I am
funny, but the way you said it was funny.
I am I am waking up and rolling over in my bed um to turn on my music history class. And today we are learning or we are watching a video of what I am told is essentially um like 1700s porn. And
Oh, oh.
it is an opera of about two lesbians, and they are both played by men, or
Mhm,
like historically they would be. The video
mhm,
was like women, and they were just like singing and talking about like touching each other, I guess. And our professor was like, "This is basically the closest thing they had to porn," and I was
mm.
like, "Awesome." It is 9:30 in the morning.
Was
And
that
here I am logged onto class with 100 other music students
that was either
watching porn together.
Dr. or Dr. Chromatica? Who was it?
That was,
Okay, yeah.
yeah. And yeah, I thought that was super interesting and funny. And then, yeah, I also remember when I had music and culture, um, I do remember logging on to The Sims in the back of that class,
Mm,
which
that
you shouldn't do.
is
But
um not okay, so well, I guess I'll talk about my experience later. It's very
okay.
similar, actually. I would not say. Um, no, okay, so yeah, that's none of that surprises me because I guess because I also had a similar experience. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for I guess context to not mm, um listeners with musical background. So there are like music core classes that undergrad
Mm-hmm.
music students, regardless of your area of focus in music, um, that all undergrads have to take. So it's music theory, aural skills, music history, um, and then, if you're a composition
Piano,
student, you'll have that. Yeah, piano's also pretty much, I'd say, core pretty much
core,
everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then on whatever your niche little thing, if you're a performance major in your instrument or voice, then you do that. Or if you're education, you take methods classes and education classes
Mm-hmm.
and that. So those are outside of the core, but in the core classes, all of the music undergrads are together. The classes are usually huge, multiple sections, that sort of thing. And music history, yeah, definitely is always presented as the core class that you have to take because it's just what you have to take, and everyone just wants to get it out of the way, and no one really cares. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which is unfortunate, but I totally understand it because musicologists can be really boring and really out of touch with people and society and especially kids and young adults. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't ever really feel like um, the musicology professors that are teaching these history survey classes uh, like have any sense of reality sometimes. I'm like,
You know, it speaks to that like super high academia and being really out of touch with the actual world, like you were kind
yeah,
of talking about,
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah. And they're all musicologists, and I feel like, yeah, they can kind of rub you the wrong way because it's like, okay, whatever, you're so much better than everybody else because you write stuff. You
Yeah,
haven't gone
exactly.
outside in 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like, yeah, exactly. And you might be really smart in your field or on your topic, but you're not really smart elsewhere. Like you can't sense that your students do not like you or are not paying attention or really could care less about this class.
Yes.
Um,
Oh my God. And we had one professor who was like always trying to be like very hip, I would say.
mhm, mhm.
Like
Interestingly
he wore like the
enough,
sneakers and stuff.
oh yeah, his shoe game's crazy. He buys shoes like every couple months. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. That's funny you say that. That was my impression of him too at the time. I guess this is okay, so this is me kind of going on my experience now. I also
Mm-hmm.
hated these classes, and it's crazy because now I'm TAing these classes, and this is what I want to do for a career. Um, I I think one of your questions later on will be like, how did I uh like get here? What do I want to do? So I'll go into that later.
Yeah.
But I hated them. They were not fun
Mm-hmm.
classes. I mean, we did well. I know you did well, and then I did well, and then like it's not, worrying about grades or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the there's like no hook. They are just
Mm-hmm.
very mundane and yeah, I don't know. Uh I also thought
I. Mm.
was like this really try hard. I hope he doesn't. We cannot let him get this in any way. um, because I love him and I want him to be on my panel for my dissertation.
We can at least
No.
bleep his name.
Okay, okay. But he rubbed me the wrong way like 4 years ago because I was like, he just kind of acted like a know-it-all. He seemed kind of snooty. He seemed like, you know, that musicology was better than what we were all kind of pursuing, which for most programs in the country, I would say the bulk of music undergrad students are education or performance. Um,
Yeah.
those are like the two big strains. There is also
Can you
composition.
even study music history as an undergrad? Not at UT.
We do have non-major survey
Oh,
classes.
okay.
They're really low enrollment, and some semesters they cancel them. But
Hmm.
yeah, I do actually think we have a couple. I literally just learned this a couple weeks ago, when they sent out like the TA interest forms, and I was like, oh shit, we have these classes? Like I didn't know that. Um, but no, yeah, so um, everyone taking these classes kind of has an idea of what they want to do in the music world, and it's not academia. It's either teaching others or being a musician professionally. Um, so um, yeah, just having to show up to these music history courses where it doesn't really seem like they care about our interests, um, it's tough. And
They
this,
they come out well, I remember they came out as pretty harsh because I remember like, and it's true, but like you walk into that class and they're like, by the way, none of you are ever gonna get a job, just
oh
so you
yeah,
know.
oh yeah, say that
Yeah,
shit all the time. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. He's like, by the way, like none of you guys are gonna like, maybe two of you are gonna get like real orchestra jobs, and
yeah. Hmm.
and that's just like harsh to hear when you're like that's what you want and it's like your dream.
Yes,
And
yeah.
you're and it is just like, well, who are you, man? Like you never heard me play and whatever. And they also like, I remember they make you address your privilege like really early on,
Hmm.
which I now think is a great thing.
Hmm.
At the time though, it's hard to receive that as like, I think it for the like young music student it can be like, you don't actually deserve to be here. You just like, are just lucky
Hmm.
and you didn't work hard and you didn't practice or whatever, which was true for me, but I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, you know. And my other qualm, very early on in that class, we had discussion posts like every week or whatever.
Hmm.
And basically put mine, and this is like a 100-person class with all of like the people, my freshman music class, like people I'm trying to impress, like be friends with,
Hmm.
who I have every other class with. And he put my like discussion post on the like giant board
Of course you did, yeah.
and my name was on it,
Oh,
by
no,
the way.
you don't do that.
Yeah, and my name was on it and he was like, here's an example of what not to do.
Oh,
Like this is horribly, he was like, this is such a stupid like thing to say. I was like, oh, okay, perfect.
no
So
way.
yeah, yeah, dude, it was crazy. And my friends around me, I just like sank into my chair, and the people around me were like kind of giggling because, and I feel like like my friends were kind of gonna take my side over like this out of touch music history professor.
Yeah, yeah.
So that made everybody hate him, or at least in my like circle, because my homies are gonna ride for me. But
Uh-huh, uh-huh. You have good homies.
but yeah,
You've always had good homies. Um,
I've got good homies.
that's crazy. That really
Mm-hmm.
surprises me because I wonder if that was an accident because I just knowing him on the other side of things now, not as well, I guess I still am a student, but as a someone who's choosing to be in this field now and not
Mm-hmm.
uh negligently kind of like having to take these classes because there is a switch. Um,
Mm.
that I do I know more about him now, and that surprises me. I feel like he is really
Mm.
caught up on like ethical teaching, um,
Yeah,
even if
I
he
will say
is
I like I went up to him after class that day and I was like, "Hey, I wish that my name hadn't been there." And
uh,
he was like, "I'm very sorry. I didn't realize it was there." So
okay. That's
there is that.
good for you for confronting
It's
him.
still,
I hope he felt
yeah.
awful afterwards. He deserves to.
He didn't seem to care that much, to be honest with you.
Well, he never
But,
does. That's the thing.
but
But
I don't know.
we're gonna make
Anyway,
so
go
many
on.
anti-musicology stands after this. It really is fun, y'all. You just um No, so yeah, I was just curious what your experience was because that was also my experience, but oddly enough, I'm here doing the thing, and I try to
Yeah.
keep my experience um at the forefront of my mind just so that I can kind of in the next couple years develop my own pedagogy and pedagogical
Mm-hmm.
values and how I experienced things and did not like the way that I experienced things or was taught things and what I should do differently to keep engagement high or to be more relatable with students or, that sort of thing. So that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
what's on my mind these days, especially now that I'm a TA for these exact classes. I'm doing music history 2 this semester.
Mm.
Last semester I did music history 1 with Dr. Um,
Aw.
and I have to show up to every class again, so I'm basically retaking these classes, and now I'm not really so much listening like content wise, even though
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole other can of worms, and we can talk about this later, I guess. I do not know this information that I am rehearing for the second time. I am literally a grad student in the same place that I did undergrad. And I do not know this information because
Yeah. Well,
we
it's so much, and it's
it's
hard
so
to, I
much,
don't
but
know.
we also had no rigor. But that can be a whole other
Yeah,
thing.
that's
Um,
yeah.
I have many thoughts on that. But what I was gonna say is I'm sitting in these classes now and I'm looking from like the point of view as like a potential or a future educator and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really developing my own value systems on how to be a good fucking teacher because apparently it's far and few in musicology specifically. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that's an
Well,
unfair assessment when we
yeah.
have really great studio professors that sharply contrast
Well,
academic professors. Well, ours,
well,
I'm talking about
they're the okay. No, we got good ones. We have good ones.
BSOM does have really good woodwind studio
Well, it's
professors.
just like we didn't. There wasn't a consistent trumpet professor the entire time that I was there.
No, and the one that they have now um has some uh differing political ideologies than literally the entire rest of the School of Music, and
Mm-hmm.
people found that out and now, but yeah, former Canadian brass.
Okay, work,
He's
work. We love the
good.
Canadian.
The trumpet studio is better than it was when you were here. The horn studio is
Okay.
now the worst, confirmed studio in the whole School of Music because it was always trumpets or horns. Now it's horns. But
Ah.
I think the woodwind studio professors are all amazing. I really do. I've always
Mm,
been in awe of like
yeah.
they are just beautiful souls who will bend over backwards for their students and be goofy with their students
Mm,
and they're also all friends. They all hang out
yeah.
outside of like being a
That's
professor.
so cute.
It is really cute. I always feel like I see the professor like he's so loud
Mm.
you can hear him in the whole School of Music and he's always laughing and they're always going and getting lunch or coffee and I'm like
That's
this is
so
it's
cute.
so cute. It's so wholesome and you would never see the brass doing that, the brass
Mm,
professors. But um
yeah.
anyways, that was kind of a tangent, but yeah, academia for music students is hard because everything else that a music student does really in an undergraduate music degree is not traditional coursework, academia type
Yeah.
stuff. Um, Even oral skills and music theory, which are closer to like traditional academia, are still different skills because you're training your ears and you're talking about, notation and writing. It's not, reading a textbook and taking an exam to regurgitate,
Mm-hmm.
history. Music history is really just a typical history class.
Yeah.
Um, And yeah, so but that's kind of why I wanted to ask you.
It is right, and I feel like I don't know, especially for performance majors, it's like, hey, well, you just told me I'm not going to get a job unless I go lock myself in the practice room.
Hmm.
So why would I study my music history homework?
Hmm.
You know, it's like that's not what I'm going to spend. Um, yeah.
Yeah, he was a
There
bit
was something else I wanted.
I also, oddly enough, well, I guess not oddly after what I've said, I did not give him a good course evaluation after that
Oh
class,
man,
which is crazy
yeah.
because 4 years later I want him to be on my panel. But
Aw.
at the time it just it
Well,
rubbed me the wrong way. I did not like him. He was just
yeah.
and not just him, a lot of them were just very detestable characters.
Well,
Um,
maybe maybe those bad evaluations had an effect, and maybe he's different now, and maybe that's why you like
yeah.
him now.
I do
I don't know.
think he's changed a little bit. We've also changed, everyone
Period. We've
changes.
grown up. We've grown up. So okay, but I guess maybe we should, because you kind of hinted at it, but like, why? What changed for you? Why do you now like musicology?
Yeah, okay, so I guess a little bit more about me. I started
Mm-hmm.
undergrad as music ed. Um, I wanted to be a band director, plain and simple, in the very happy-go-lucky Texas band, marching band kind of way. I ate that shit up. Um, I wanted to be a band director. I wanted to have like a competitive, you know, BOA Grand National finalist band program. That was the dream of mine. Um, it was actually not that artificial. My goal from the start was to always be a very passionate and inspiring, um, parentheses, queer band director that
Mm.
showed young people, high schoolers, how to funnel their passion into whatever it is they want to do, and to kind of let that be the lasting image of high school before they go off into college and like go cure cancer or pass laws or
Mm.
something. So ever since high school or senior year of high school, when I decided I was going to be a music education major, my value from the start was to um, not have as many students in my band program one day study music. I couldn't care less, really, if I have one person in my band program study music or the whole wind ensemble go and study music in college. My goal was to show people that we have voices and we have influence on the world and we can make changes and do good things and powerful things if we just put like a little bit of effort into it and lead by example sort of thing. So that was always my goal. And
Mm.
then I also wanted to be like a competitive band program that like made finals at BOA San Antonio, Grand Nationals, all of like the big marching band things. So those were like my two goals. Um, and it was in college that I increasingly disliked the uh the appeal that music education was having on people. As I matured, I really started to see music education in Texas specifically, since it is crazy here and very different from a lot of the rest of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
I
very
literally want to do an entire
I
episode on
think
that,
it
by the
needs
way.
to be a
But
whole episode. Yeah, it's in a
yeah.
nutshell, I saw it as very toxic and very political, filled with a lot of problems that I was increasingly worrying about because I didn't know how to solve them. And I am very OCD, and I was like, "Ugh, I really don't want to turn like a blind eye to the fact that yelling at somebody to straighten their legs, when they physically cannot, or like,
Mm-hmm.
they're worrying about what they're eating for dinner tonight, not about having straight legs. Like I don't want that to be my career. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be making money off of, the pursuit of excellence or whatever. these band program mottos are these days, because they all have the word excellence in them. Commitment to excellence, striving for excellence. I think is defining the standard. It's like all these like
Oh my God.
super like kind of like supposed to be inspirational, but really in reality, kind of toxic uh um value systems that we're like indoctrinating into these kids. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was just icky. And then on top of that, I grew increasingly aware of the fact that band directors oftentimes are the hardest working people on any high school campus, um,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the state of Texas. They're usually the first person on a high school campus to show up, and they're usually the last people to leave every day, at least compared to other teachers. This isn't to discredit, the trials and the hardships that other teachers go through. It's not a comparison game,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, band often means before school sectionals or rehearsals, and band also
Mm-hmm.
often means after school rehearsals, sectionals. Even if there isn't like a sectional or a rehearsal, the band directors just have to be there to like keep the band hall open
Unlock the
for,
band room.
yes, unlock the band room, just literally be there to unlock
Yeah.
the band room for the private lessons staff who come and go to teach lessons to the students. So and so yeah, I mean, I feel like my band directors in high school got to school at about, our high school was crazy. We started at 7:17 a.m.
Oh
So I
my goodness.
think our earliest band director got there at about 5:45. And then,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
and
That's
Anne had two daughters, and his wife was also a band director. He is exhausted. I have seen that man age um quite a bit. Every time I go back home and I like see him somehow, I'm always like, oh wow, this is taking a toll on you. Um and then they leave, marching, especially in the fall. The fall is definitely more rigorous than the spring.
right.
um, we're going home at like 6 p.m. after rehearsal, marching band rehearsal is done. That's a 12-hour day, and the reality is, band directors are getting paid like, 50K a year for starting, and then
Yeah.
you spend your whole career just trying to get up to like a decent um
Yeah.
salary. But the starting is usually not great. It's only acceptable in areas where the neighborhood feeder systems have a good socioeconomic status, and the bands have sort of a name or some sort of history of
Mm-hmm.
placing well at contests, which thus gives fine arts departments in school districts um, more leeway to pay band directors higher, or at least give them credit for the hard work that they do. Like I'm thinking in Flower Mound, or Louisville ISD. I heard a friend tell me the other day that middle school, kind of like newish band director, I think maybe this is her third or fourth year at one of the middle schools that feeds into Flower Mound. She's making like 90K as a middle school.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
That
That's
is amazing.
beautiful.
I mean, that's what it should be. That's what we definitely work hard enough for that, and we have very niche
Mm-hmm.
training for that. But that is very far and few. And so
Yeah.
I came to a point one day, I think sophomore year of undergrad, where I woke up and very kind of uh, pedantically is not the right word, but very negatively, I had the thought that like, why am I prioritizing the lives of unborn people over what I want to be doing right now, which is to learn a language, to take classes outside of the music school for once, to not have to
Mm.
fucking take conducting or children's literature or string methods. And for me personally, I have always had a hard time figuring out what I want to do in life, because everything sounds cool to me. Um,
Yeah.
and there's just always something that I want to be pursuing academically, um, because I'm interested in it. I love history. I love science. I like learning languages. I like learning about culture. And I wasn't getting that fix with a music education degree. And so it was kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different little things in my head being like, hey, maybe this isn't right for you. Um, and so finally one day I switched to a BA in music, which is much different actually than a BM, because there's so many less requirements. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's a BA, at least at UT. I've heard of it being very similar with other programs too. A BA in music is a very open-ended degree. You still take those music core classes that we were talking about, but then you kind of make or propose the rest of your degree and you self-select uh, what the rest of your BA is going to um, be. And BSOM, you have to fill out like a Qualtrics form and you have to kind of argue uh, why it is you want to have a secondary field in XYZ thing. So
Mm.
it's very the requirements are very minimal in a BA music wise. And so switching to a BA, all of a sudden I didn't have to take all that crap that a music education degree requires, which makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying that it's those are just crap classes point blank. I mean, those are valuable for the purpose of being a music educator, yes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I just had to accept that um, I guess I did not want to be a music educator as I had always thought. And that was kind of a sad uh, um, thing to realize because I definitely had built up these fantasies of what a good band program should be and a good,
Mm-hmm.
healthy environment for students could be. And I kind of had to part ways with that fantasy. Um, but yeah, so I switched to a BA and I think the different tracks are like, uh, for BA or suggested pathways, I think is what they call them, are like the composition. If you're a composition student, you're a BA. If you know that you're going to go into musicology in grad school, or ethnomusicology, or music theory, which we'll get into those later,
Mm-hmm.
then you also do a BA. And then I guess these days, music therapy is also um, commonly a BA at places that don't offer an explicit BA education. Because I know, do you remember
Hmm.
Sophie in the horn studio?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's doing music therapy at uh, Georgia now.
Right, 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 right. Yeah.
But she knew from the get-go that she wanted to do music therapy. So I think she did like 1 year music ed and was like, fuck this. And she switched to a BA. And whenever you switch to a BA, you have to declare a secondary field that is outside of the School of Music. And you have to argue why that secondary field will fulfill whatever it is you want to uh, achieve career-wise. So it's really self-driven. You kind of have to have an image of what it is you're doing with music. But for her, she declared her secondary field psychology, and she took a bunch of psych classes because she wanted to be a music therapist, and we don't
Smart.
have that as a program here. So you can kind of curate it yourself, um,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool.
That is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I switched to a BA, and then all of a sudden I start taking the classes that I wanted to take. So I declared my secondary field in European studies, and all of a sudden I was taking a bunch of like European history and cultural classes outside of BSOM. I was more often on the other side of campus than our little nook, which was
Mm.
nice, and that's what I wanted. The BA also does have a language requirement. You have to get to 12 hours of a language and no other music degree has a language requirement. But I wanted
Mm-hmm.
that. I wanted to be taking a language. I just did not have the time prior. Um,
Mm-hmm.
So then I started taking Italian. It was really cute. And yeah, and when I switched, all of a sudden I was happier. That was a big thing that I noticed.
Mm.
It was a selfish decision, right? Because I'm not really thinking about the future education of kids and, potential world leaders. But it's been more mentally um uh, sustainable, I guess, for me long term, just because I'm doing what I want to do. I guess the bar is in hell to be wanting to learn what you're going to pay money for and give up years of your life to study for. Um,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, seriously.
but that's not to
Well, and I think like
discredit.
I mean,
Well, go ahead, go ahead.
it can it can feel selfish, but in reality, like if it seems like music education was not right for you,
Mhm.
and same for me, it was not right for me, and I think if we had gone on to be music educators, we would have sucked because we would have hated it.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah,
And so I don't, and that would have been worse for the kids. So I think
yeah.
it's not
The
selfish in the
earlier
end.
the better. Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Uh-huh.
for sure. Um, yeah, that was a big thing too. I felt like I would get to a high school one day and I would be band director and I would regret so much. Um,
Mhm.
so much stuff that I wanted to do while I was at university, and I had the resources and the time and the scholarship to be taking the classes, and did not because there wasn't any room in my
Mhm.
degree. And I kind of was motivated to not live uh, regretfully. I mean, that sounds really dramatic. Um, it's not like it's the fucking end of the world. These are all like
I
privilege
mean,
problems, right? Like, no one's dying
oh
over
yeah,
this,
I know.
but finding out what you want to do is really hard, especially in Texas when we are kind of ingrained with the dual performance or education tracks
Mhm.
and music. There's almost
Maybe composition every now
maybe
and then.
competition. That's like the weird like third one that's kind of just like
The
hovering.
alts.
Yes, it's there's like no advertisement about anything other than those two tracks. And um I think it's to the detriment of a lot of people actually, because a lot of people get have similar experiences that we do, and they get pretty far into a music education degree or a performance degree, and they're like, fuck, I really do not like teaching, or I really do not like kids, or I'm just not a good educator, or, for performance, like, I really don't think I can make it in the performance world. The performance world is so cutthroat. It's like trying to be a pop singer. It's like trying to win American Idol these days because the
Mhm.
amount of performance degrees that universities are spitting out increases every year as music education um, and studying music in higher education becomes more accessible and uh, a bigger reality for people. But the professional musician spots in orchestras, ensembles, choirs, is decreasing over time because
Mhm.
it's I hate to admit it, it's slightly a dying art. Um, and even when they're not, they're filled with tenure track people who won through auditions, 30, 40 years ago, these spots and have them for life. And so it's just a waiting game for people to die, is really what it is,
Mhm.
die or retire. And so you have like these small, middle of nowhere ensembles, orchestras, mid-Texas Philharmonic, the San Antonio Symphony, the Austin
Mhm.
Symphony, the Victoria Symphony, like really small, not big organizations at all. And I guess I'm defining big organization as an organization that can pay its performers and that be the sole source of income for those. Like it's a sustainable source of
Yeah.
sustainable salary for the like they don't have to work another job in addition to that,
Yeah.
because that is the goal for most performance students is to be a performer and not have to
Mm-hmm.
do something else on the side. And so,
Have
anyways,
60 lesson students, yeah.
yeah, a studio of 100, no biggie.
Yeah.
And so you have these really small um orchestras and symphony auditions that happen for third horn audition or second bassoon, and people are flying from all over the fucking country with degrees from Yale, New England Conservatory, Colburn, um like very prestigious, hard-earned degrees in music, vying for these middle of nowhere little spots, um, because the amount of people that have performance degrees these days far outnumbers the amount of open spots where you can be a performer. And it is just, yeah, I don't think a lot of people know that. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always like explaining to my non-music friends that. Uh, that industry, like the state of that industry and how crazy it is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so anyways, that was a whole tangent. But a lot of people essentially get very far into an undergrad performance degree before realizing, hey, maybe the odds of me making it aren't very high, or maybe I just don't have what it takes, or maybe I'm good, but I'm not number one out of 300 people that are going to show up to an audition at every audition I ever take in my life, kind of good.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's,
Or maybe I'm, yeah, or maybe I'm good, but I don't play in the exact way with the exact type of horn that, this orchestra wants. Or maybe like I'm an improviser, or like I don't want to play the excerpts like, I don't know, like the way that we would go like note by note, you know, and
Mhm.
be like, well, this is exactly how it's supposed to be. And like just trying, like thousands of people trying to recreate this like exact horn line in the most perfect way
Yeah, yeah.
rather than expressing themselves musically
Mhm.
is such a shame, in my opinion.
It is. It's just upholding this like classical music ego. Um, it's crazy. Yeah, because that's another thing. Say you are good. Say you are like top 20 French horn players in all of North America. Um, Okay, that's great, but you show up to audition day and you crack one note, you don't make it to round two. Like for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Maybe you like had a hiccup or like your nose itched or you were like trying to hold back a sneeze. Or
Yeah.
maybe they say they audition's blind and it's not really blind and they hear you walk in with high heels and they're all sexist.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Like it's so crazy to build your whole life like uh on what hopefully will happen in an audition room. Um, what good can come out of an audition room, and yeah. So I really think that uh, music schools should really start advertising more different avenues other than performance and education to try to help people out earlier on, so that they don't spend 4 years studying horn
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe 2 more
Yeah, and
years getting a
because I think like,
master's. Go ahead.
mm-hmm. Because I think people, not everybody really wants to. Like, I feel like I kind of chose performance because I was like, well, it's kind of a basic music degree,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I'll go in and then I'll just switch to like what I really want,
Hmm.
And that's what I did. But yeah, I think if music therapy, actually, I don't know if I would have started music therapy. I don't know if High School Sally was into it. But like, yeah, I agree with you. Like if there were more options, because music is such a giant field,
Hmm.
and also the way that like getting a music degree, like it automatically in most big universities is like you're going to be studying classical music.
Hmm.
And like that's fine. Classical music is awesome. But
It's not the
hello,
majority
like
these days. Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah.
and or maybe jazz,
Hmm.
if you play the right instrument, by the way.
Yes.
um but it's like, what about, like, I don't know, like people aren't listening to that really, like what about I don't know. Anyways.
No, for sure. Music, this is kind of how we started off an hour ago. Music people are just not all music people. That's not what I'm saying. There is a tendency sometimes for music people to be so up their own like their their egos are huge that we think that these things really matter. And yeah, I don't know. You can like be a professor of musicology and teach only classical music. That's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But you do kind of have a disposition to, not disposition, like almost like an obligation to, at the very least, recognize that most non-music people today, non-music, like classically trained music people today, are not listening to classical music, and that pop music really is basically the future of music. And you can keep doing your classical music thing. That's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But you can't think that you're better than other people because of it. Or you can't like
Hmm.
tell your students like, oh hey, only out of 100 of y'all are ever going to get jobs one day, even if there is truth to that, because you're just being an
Yeah.
asshole and you're rubbing people the wrong way. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. This field is
Ye- Yeah.
beautiful and nerdy and also sometimes aggravating, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's very elitist at its core because I don't know. It's playing like really old white people music for really old white people,
Yes, yeah.
you know? And yeah, it's just a little frustrating because I don't think that people like music students want that necessarily, and I think that we're kind of forced into that just because that's the way that like like degrees in music are organized
Yeah, that's how it's always been
currently.
done. That's how it should be. That is what we uphold
Oh my
as
God,
a
yeah.
proper music education for undergrad
Yeah.
musicians. I will say Texas is very behind in that regard. Um, a
Mm.
lot of the UC schools in California and that whole system, Irvine, Riverside, Berkeley, LA, um, they have very niche music degree programs for undergrads. And there are a lot of undergrads at those schools who, going straight into college from high school, are doing um, musicology or mariachi or uh, just things that are not,
Like songwriting or
yeah, just
yeah.
very they're just more in tune with like what music actually is today in society. Um, I think several schools in the Midwest are also pretty progressive with the with their options. I mean, music education is really also big in the Midwest, like it is Texas. But there are a lot of ethnomusicology programs. Actually, ethnomusicology um, at the institutional level comes from the Midwest, which is crazy to think about.
What?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should. Can you
Yeah, yeah,
define
yeah, yeah.
ethnomusicology?
Okay, so I guess we're an hour 15 in and we haven't really even talked all that much about about anything, quite honestly. So musicology is the study of music. It's like music and whatever it is you want to talk about. Ethnomusicology um, is more complicated. So it has been defined in hundreds of different ways by different people over time since it was invented about 100 years ago. Um, and quite frankly, it never is entirely any of those things. And how the cookie crumbles is that music studies dealing with white people are musicology, and music studies dealing with not white people are ethnomusicology. Is kind of how that gets handed out. Um, Now, the definition of ethnomusicology is not, the brown people music, but that really is how people affect it today, enforce it today. Even just colloquially, you'll be talking about like, hey, what do you
Mm.
study? And I'll be like, this is an example. This is not what I study. But if I said I study, you know, the musical traditions of uh, Texas Mexican uh, confluence on both sides of the Rio Grande in XYZ periods. People will be like, oh, so you're an ethnomusicologist. Because you are like, you've identified a group of people that are not in the white people Western music canon, classical
Canon.
tradition.
Hmm.
And so by default, you are an ethnomusicologist. Um, and that honestly is true a lot of the times, but not necessarily because people self-define that way. That's just kind of how we're dashed out. And honestly, I don't think it'll ever change because at an institutional level, we have different societies for both. I'm talking like actual society, like the American Society for
Mm.
Musicology and then the Society for Ethnomusicology, um, like the actual uh, societies and conferences that we go to, once a year, held in different cities around the country every year. They're just two separate organizations. Um,
Well, you never know. There used to be two separate music therapy organizations that merged in
that's
like the 70s.
that's right. I remember you talking about that. And
Yeah.
hopefully, the thing is there are still enough people in both that have it out for each other and that do not want it to mix. Um,
Mm. You're of the camp that it should mix.
I think it should all be
And
music studies because we're all doing academia about music point blank. That's what I
you
believe.
also think music theory should be in there.
I do. Okay,
I
so
remember you
this
said that.
this this little straggler is music theory. And music theory is also academic, talking about music, analyzing music. The bulk of the practice of the field of the industry is writing about music, just like musicology and ethnomusicology. The only difference is the way it goes about it. Um, so music theory um, is more involved with analyzing the technical aspects of music, key, form, genre, lyrics, modulations, harmonies, melodies, the actual content of the music itself, and less,
Roman numeral chord analysis.
yeah, the shit like that, and less so of the historical, political, societal, contextual side of the music. Um,
Hmm.
and and it uses that methodology to do whatever it is it's going to do, whatever the paper you're reading is going to argue. Um, and that's why I think it should all be music studies because, well, first of all, at its core, I think all good musicologists should do a little bit of music theory. Like any good paper, musicology paper, should have some sort of analysis that kind of talks about the content of the music and not just the political and the historical contextualization of music. Um, and vice versa, I think any good music theory paper should not just talk about why this jump from E to A in the treble clef signifies the inner turmoil of XYZ character as a metaphor. Like that in itself is also not really high stakes without using musicological methods where you are relating your argument back to um, uh, society. Like, why does it matter? Right? You can argue anything about anything. It can be a weak argument, it can be a strong argument. But the most important thing is that you are always explaining the stakes involved and why it matters. And I think that's where sharing, like the fluidity of musicology, ethnomusicology, and music theory can really be a beautiful thing. Um, because in a vacuum, talking about the jump from the E to the A and why it like does not inherently matter in this world. Why are we, it's
Mm,
kind of a waste of breath if you don't explain why that means XYZ. That means this person is sad. And then also, this person being sad, perhaps is the analysis we're making, is important because in society, um, women don't have a voice. Maybe that's the
mm,
argument you're making. Or, a colored person, maybe the character is a person of color and they're feeling sadness because no one's listening to them or no one, that's where you
mm-hmm,
actually put in the punch of your argument and your writing and what you have to say. Um, that's when it matters because
mm,
the music that itself, um, I'm sure there are cases where it does, but very often, like it does not exist in a vacuum. Just inherently, because music isn't is a thing that we experience and is not tangible. We can't really hold music. You can hold sheet music, and there are commodified ways of music, but the experience of music is a thing that takes time. Um, and is never in a vacuum. Um,
mm,
even listening to music in your headphones walking down the street is involved in some sort of socio political, historical um, thing that is happening. Um,
mm.
like, it may seem it's you kind of have to like wake up to this idea that there's always stakes in everything. Um, but yeah, everything is political for better or for worse. And
Mm-hmm.
even an innocent act as walking down the street listening to music um, can be meaningful when you think about, okay, uh, what what is this person thinking, or why is this person in the habit of listening to music as opposed to listening to the sounds around them, or is this
Mm.
person privileged enough to afford AirPods that allow them to listen to music while walking down the street, or there's always something. Nothing ever exists in a vacuum entirely on its own. And I think musicology, ethnomusicology, and music theory being all three fields that produce writing and prose and academia and have conferences and their respective journals and societies, organizations. Um, it's all music studies because we're all talking about
Mm.
how music as a phenomenon uh, intertwines, intersects, overlaps, impacts, whatever it is, with some sort of like human experiential thing. And it could
Yeah.
be as little as, how does Disney music validate um my identity as a female in America? Or it could be as dark as how does um music, I'm trying to think of like a really bad example. I mean, there are instances of music being used as torture in some places on Earth,
Yeah.
and there are studies about that, and you could be writing about that. So
See,
um
yeah, and I feel like that would be a music therapy overlap too, is um music and like feelings and psychology.
for sure.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
also music theory. Yeah, I'm with you. Like
They're all
it is all music
intertwined. They just
studies.
have different methods. I guess I didn't
Yeah.
explain the different methodology between musicology and ethnomusicology. So
Mm.
apart from just the dichotomy being, white versus not white, which is not what either people in either field would say it is, but that is what it is made out to be, unfortunately. There are different methodologies. So historical musicology um, is the technical term, I guess, for musicology, historical music, it's actually it's a branch underneath musicology that just deals more with just history of music, point blank. Um, but musicology is more using history, politics, um, and or new sort of critical theories
Hmm.
to make some sort of argument or produce some sort of new understanding of music um, or for people, I guess, and yeah, that's that. Ethnomusicology, the main methodology is very different. It's ethnography. So ethnography being going into a culture that is not your own and writing in first person point of view your experiences in that culture, kind of like a diary, and
Oh,
coming up with some sort of understanding um, of this phenomenon and inextricably the people involved with this musical phenomenon, and then writing about that like kind of retroactively and putting out writing. So one
so
is very
well,
like, go ahead, go ahead.
would okay, like technically, if I like wrote a piece about like my experience in Appalachia with this type of music,
Mm-hmm.
would that be ethnomusicology? Even though
Even
because
though,
I'm not from here,
mm-hmm,
even though it's white
mm-hmm.
people.
The, I,
Okay, word.
I'm just my intuition would say that people would say that that is like uh mainly musicology with kind of like a uh an auto-ethnographic focus, which
Okay.
ethnography being historically a tool of the ethnomusicology practice. Um, but no, I think people would say that that's musicology just because you're white
It's white
and we're
people.
doing, yeah, honestly. Um, it's
That's
so
crazy.
weird. It's so backwards. I really am pro
It
just
is weird.
tear down all the walls. It's just music studies, point blank. But yeah, no, ethnomusicology is very different. It is built on anthropology and
Okay.
that whole field, which is not um, solely a musical thing or even a fine arts thing, but it's,
Hmm.
well, quite frankly, it's a colonial thing. The field of anthropology came out of, I took a history on, a course on the history of ethnomusicology last semester, so this is all kind of fresh in my mind. But anthropology came out of colonialism with the white um, affinities that people had for faraway places that they were unfamiliar with, um, which isn't inherently a bad thing. Like being curious about other cultures can go both ways. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's the way that you
Hmm.
go about it and the way that you talk about it and frame
Hmm.
that problems start to arise. How are you talking about these people on paper? Are you saying like, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
the lesser people of Central Africa have these really bizarre musical tendencies? Like that is just that's fucked. You're terrible.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so ethnomusicology is just a specific like derivative of anthropology. um, it used to be called very back in the day. Actually, I think originally it was called not ethnomusicology, but comparative musicology, um,
Hmm. Oh.
because it was just solely this like industry built on comparing other musics, typically exotic musics or other musics, to what was held at the time as the correct music or the teleological, like pinnacle of humankind music making, which is the white musical canon, and comparing it and contrasting it. So it was called comparative musicology. So you have like
Hmm.
Dutch people in Indonesia. documenting instruments, notes, is a microtonal, like what are like the Hertz system, the modern
Mm.
Hertz system came from ethnomusicology. Um, Fun
Oh,
fact. It was, yeah,
that is fun.
because yeah, that one's kind of harmless. Like we can be like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Um, because we needed like a way to systematize sound and pitch. And the only way that we could kind of like accommodate non not tonal. It's not that they're not tonal, but just other cultures that
Like that,
use
yeah.
like more microtones. It's not the same like
Yeah.
tuning system, I guess. I don't. There's a better way to describe that, but
Like
the
smaller than half steps
yes,
and
yes, yes, yes. Not a system built on half steps sort of thing. The
like
that
we
was the
usually think of
Hertz.
notes as like da da and then I guess there's a ton of notes between those two.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
you're not like from the Western art, just for the people that aren't like I don't know, I'm thinking of like my family who are like not musical.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Like
like
two
the
notes
difference
on a
between da da and da,
yeah,
like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
a ton
yeah.
of notes in this anyway.
Yeah, and on a mathematical level, you can bring that to like a decimal point. It's really crazy. It's just like time.
Mhm.
How time
Mhm.
is not just second by second, but is milliseconds and tenths and hundredths and thousandths of
Mhm.
it's like that with pitch. It's a spectrum. So, two notes side by side on a piano can actually have quite a bunch of different notes in between if that's how your culture has sort of trained you to hear and perceive pitch. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's where the Hertz system comes out of is ethnomusicology, which was originally called comparative mu
Mm.
musicology. They switched it to ethnomusicology at some point in the 20th century, I think like mid 20th century. Um, and yeah, the roots with anthropology as like sort of this white privileged obsession with the other. Um, is
Yeah.
really the foundation of ethnomusicology. Today, it is not because most of the people doing ethnomusicology today are um, people of color musicians trying to kind of like either write about their own culture or write about um, I don't know, anything really. You don't we're past the idea. This was a late 20th century idea that if you were in ethnomusicology and you weren't a white person who, quote unquote, doesn't have like any culture, sort of, that idea, then you had to write about your own culture. So, like, if you are Hispanic and you are an ethnomusicologist, the idea that, like, oh, are you writing about, music in Mexico? Like,
Mm.
yeah, we're trying to get rid of that assumption. So anyone can write anything, obviously, about whatever it is that they want. Um, but yeah, ethnomusicology has been like this like slow emancipation from really bad shit. Musicology too,
Mm.
but the ways that we go about the two, like prosaically, like as an
Mm.
academic, are in itself very different. One being more like kind of memoir style
Yeah.
talking about experiences and going out into the quote unquote field and documenting those experiences. And one just being you reading history books on your couch and like little articles and being like, yeah, I think we can perceive, Schubert's Unfinished Symphony as a metaphor for his hidden queerness in the 19th century. It's very different. One's a lot more
Mm.
speculative and one's more concrete, but it's really actually not even that black and white. I'm really boiling it down to what it has been
Mm.
historically. Everything is way more fluid today, and there's a lot of crossover and really any methodology that you deem necessary for whatever it is your project is or seeks to do can be appropriate. So
Mm.
nothing is mutually exclusive, and that's why actually The department here at UT requires that we take both a foundations in musicology and ethnomusicology class, regardless of what we are self-declared as. So I took ethnomusicology
Mm.
last semester, but I am a musicologist, not an ethnomusicologist. Um, and yeah, this semester the we're taking musicology, our whole cohort, which my cohort of 6 students includes, yeah, it includes 2 musicologists and 4 ethnomusicologists. And so now they're in the musicology foundations class this semester. So
Mm.
I think that is one thing that we do right. Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think yeah, it is so fluid, and I think that makes your argument like a little bit stronger of like it should all just be, like the labels are maybe more divisive than they are helpful
Yeah,
in some ways.
absolutely, because they're more about exclusion and what you're not supposed to do than like what you should
Mm.
be doing. But it's like I said, like if I'm going to write a paper on the music of a movie, it would do me justice to like have a figure or two in that paper with some musical notation of the leitmotif or the love theme between two
Yeah.
characters or something, and just to visualize it, um, and
Mm-hmm.
to kind of analyze, not the whole damn piece, but maybe just like what is happening in this measure or something, and um, but no, that's music theory at that point, and then vice versa. So
Mm.
I think it's all fluff. Ugh,
Yeah,
it's
I'm with you.
exhausting. I'm like
Can
exhausted.
you
Sorry.
uh could you give like examples of like the projects you've worked on? So I know of like your Call Me by Your Name essay, the project you
Hmm.
did in Vienna, and then this one you're working on, the Hill Country Gay Boy
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I'll start with the Call Me by Your Name. So I did my
I love that piece.
yes, I did my senior thesis here at UT because again, I switched from music education to a BA and all of a sudden could start doing the things that I wanted to do. And so I took an
Hmm.
independent study with one of our film music professors here at UT, who is Hannah Lewis. I love that woman with my whole life. She is the leading scholar on the music of La La Land. She has,
Really?
yeah,
Huh.
her book just came out on the music of La La Land last semester.
Wow.
She interviewed the film director. She kind of positioned La La Land in this timeline of musicals, American musicals, and she really focused on the fact that Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone are not like classically trained singers, like they can sing, but the point
Mm-hmm.
of them singing and maybe a little badly
Mm.
at some points because Ryan Gosling's not a great singer is intentional because it makes the storyline more relatable. It's more of a human story, and then if you
Yeah.
think about the ending, and it's not a fairy tale ending. Spoiler alert. Um, the choice to make the 2 main characters not you know physically capable of like belting out music, but kind of
Yeah.
have like voice fracks, and Ryan Gosling's kind of an awkward singer. Like it makes it all the more relatable. And so she kind of positioned that in this timeline of like how American musicals have progressed and what it means to be a musical today. And yeah, so she's the sorry, you asked me and I'm like going on her, but really niche stuff. Musicology is pretty cool. Like you can do whatever you want to do, whatever however niche. Um, but I took an independent study with her, and I knew going into it that I wanted to do something on the music of Call Me by Your Name, which is a film by Luca Guadagnino, an Italian film director. Uh, Came out in 2017. It's based on a book by Andre Aciman. Basically, in a nutshell, the storyline is it's a queer love story between a 17-year-old French-Italian boy and a 24-year-old. Um, I'm saying it slowly so that you can catch my drift.
Hmm.
A
Yikes.
24-year-old American PhD student of the boy's the 17-year-old boy's professor father, right?
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's this like American that has studied Italian and is apparently fluent in Italian, coming to Italy for 6 weeks, studying with this professor. I believe it is what are they studying? They're studying the study of language. I forget what the word for that is though. Is it etymology?
Um,
Something
sure.
I don't know. But it was also a little bit of archaeology mixed into. Don't actually really know what he was in Italy studying. But he they kind of him and the professor's son kind of start a complicated,
Freaking.
yeah, to say the least. I mean, actually no, yeah, to say the least, because they really don't do all that much. But I've always been very conflicted by this film. First of all, it is in my top 10 on Letterboxd. I'm a big movie guy. I like to think of myself as an amateur movie critic. I love going to the movies. I love film music. Um, back when I was a
By the
music,
way,
oh, go
the
ahead.
study of language is linguistics, and etymology is the study of words and how they're formed.
Oh, okay.
Continue.
Okay. It's yeah. Maybe it's both. I don't actually even know if they really defined why Oliver was in Italy studying what. But Um, no, yeah. So I've always loved movies. Back when I was a music ed major, I made marching band show
Oh.
playlists that I wanted to turn into marching band shows, and they almost all were based on movie music. I wanted to have the movie music
Mm-hmm.
like arranged for marching band, and then we'd make a show out of it. So I've always liked movie music. I remember in 6th grade actually on the first day of school we were doing like what's our favorite songs, and my gay nerd little ass was like I really like Professor Umbridge from the Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix soundtrack.
Aww.
And I was like kind of bullied, but I didn't really care because that soundtrack, Harry Potter,
That does goes hard.
the Order of the Phoenix, I think is the best one. Actually no, Prisoner of Azkaban, then Order of the Phoenix. Those are the two
Okay.
best soundtracks. They go so fucking hard. So, anyways, and film music is something that you can study in musicology. There are film musicologists um, via our La La Land one that we have on staff here, and she's just one of like three. Um,
Mm.
so, I have always had conflicting feelings about Call Me by Your Name. I love the film. And I also cringe at the film, unfortunately. Um, I Problems aside, I think it would probably be my favorite film of all time, but with the problems, I just cannot let it get that high. It's in my top 10, um, but it is unfortunately, if you know what signs to look for, and they are there, and that is what I argue and highlight in my thesis. Um, it is sort of a story of predation. It is a little bit voyeuristic, not quite voyeuristic, but basically the 17-year-old is not ready for a relationship or even a gay relationship at that point, um, with anyone. And you have this like American coming in who knows that his time in Italy is only 6 weeks and that he will be skedadding back to the other side of the world, and
Mm.
basically he can do or make whatever mess he wants to in Italy because he's going home. Um, and he kind of confuses and hurts emotionally the 17-year-old. Um, and it's so unfortunate because the book and the movie were not supposed to be that at all. It is literally an accidental cautionary tale on
Mm.
predation, specifically in the queer community. And basically I talk about how the music's emphasis on, or sorry, the film's music, sorry, the film's emphasis on aesthetics at large, aesthetic beauty, both visually but also sonically in the soundtrack of the film, um, is. a distraction of
Mm.
the otherwise problems that
Mm.
are occurring throughout the film, but because, there's, because the music is pretty, it's Ravel, and because the visuals are stunning, and it's a really beautifully, uh, it's beautifully shot, cinematographically, yeah, that word. um it distracts the viewer of the film from kind of acknowledging that um there's not really like a lot of ethical things going on. First of all, it's a 17-year-old and a 24-year-old. By
Right.
American law, that is a minor. um Apologists for the film will incite that the age of consent in most of Europe is 14. Um,
Oh my god.
I do argue that when have laws ever been definitions of like what actually is
Yeah.
happening in science?
Yeah.
Never, hardly ever.
Yeah.
Um, so, just because a law says something does not mean, the second he turns 14,
Eighteen.
he's
Yeah.
ripe and ready to go.
Oh
Um,
my god. Yeah.
so I that was kind of one of my arguments. Another argument is that uh, the signs of someone being not ready developmentally for uh, a relationship, one, but accepting their own queerness, two, are there and present and very obvious in Elio, and Oliver having many more years experience in life and seems to be um at least a slight bit more um okay with his sexual orientation, kind of takes advantage of his power. He is actually the one to initiate intimacy first in the film. um
Mm-hmm.
that's another thing that I argue is that a young person looking up to an older person with sexual desire is inevitable. That, I mean, we all have, most of us, I don't want to say all, there are people that exist
You
on the
freaks.
asexual spectrum that does exist. Most
Yeah.
people have uh, sexual awakenings with, you know, people that we see on TV as little kids, right? Like, I know mine was fucking Josh Hutcherson, and I was like 9. Josh Hutcherson is like, I think a decade older than me. You can't
Yeah.
fault a
Yeah.
young, yeah, right? It's just inevitable that we're going to look up and kind of realize what we're into and maybe even want it. And maybe if you're 17 and figuring this out, maybe even kind of go after it. But the
Mm-hmm.
older person who is supposed to be more mature and responsible has
Yeah.
no business taking advantage of
Yeah.
chemistry, right? Um, and so, Elio does kind of want Oliver, and he's figuring that out and he's grappling with that. And Oliver's very pushy about it. Elio comes out to Oliver, and Oliver's like, "We can't talk about this." And then within 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes in the film, Oliver leans in to kiss Elio. And then they start
Oh my
making
gosh.
out. Yeah, Oliver initiated it. People don't talk about that. Oliver initiated it. Elio leans in. Elio's going all in because he's like, he kind of wants it. And then Oliver pulls away and he's like, "Are you better now?" He literally says
Whoa.
that. Yeah, nobody
That's
talks
crazy.
about that in the film. Instead, that whole sequence has been like romanticized on like these aesthetic YouTube playlists of like Northern Italy 1980s. Like no one talks about the fact that Oliver's hella manipulative. Um
Hmm.
and like kind of sends a lot of mixed signals and confusing messages to this um otherwise innocent son of a professor who was just trying to have a summer. Um
Mm-hmm.
and is now just like kind of forcibly sharing a bedroom with this American man because his dad is a professor that houses an American every summer to study. So like, it's a little icky.
Mhm.
And it's so unfortunate because they could have really changed the dynamics going. Like I said earlier, I'm all about changing book to movie to be more ethical. This is an example of that. Yes,
Mm.
the book is in writing. You can't just like, I guess you can like take books off shelves, but the book is out there. You can't really change the original story. If you're making a movie, it was 2017
Mhm.
now. I feel like it would have much more uproar today. Quite,
Yeah.
it's not even a decade old, but I don't think it would have
I
flown
mean,
up.
2017. It's only 2 years after gay marriage is legalized.
Yeah,
Like,
and I really feel like
different landscape.
very different landscape. I also feel like COVID was a really big pivot for a lot of ethical things, just
Mhm.
post-COVID George Floyd era of society. I think we're way more attuned to
Yeah.
uh, problems and power imbalances, and I don't think we're near as afraid to speak up about things today. We
Yeah.
obviously, there's always more to be done. But yeah, so in 2017, this kind of flew under the radar. But the biggest argument that I make is that um the film, and because the soundtrack supports the film's kind of voyeuristic lens visually, like the aural landscape of the film is very much on par with the visual landscape of the film. They're both pretty and sumptuous, and the music is not actually a film score composed by a composer. It's all pre-existing, mainly classical music and some pop pieces, just to kind of like set the scene
Mhm.
in 80s Italy. Um, so because the soundtrack upholds the films or the visual ideology, because it is an ideology. These are humans making a film, and they're um like I said earlier, it does not, nothing exists in a vacuum. People made this film, and by definition there is some sort of ideology or privilege or thinking or lack thereof going into this project. Um, and yeah, so sorry. So if music is supporting the visuals in the film, and the visuals in the film are alarming, basically, A plus B equals C sort of thing. I'm kind of critiquing the music of the film. It's basically a film review with like my methodology, or like my lens that I'm going at it is using the audio visual aspects of the film to kind of
Mm.
craft like an intelligible and kind of a meaty film review, as opposed to just being like, I don't like it, it's icky. Like I'm like supporting my claims essentially through music, a musical analysis. Um, the
Mm.
biggest argument that I make, the biggest punch that I pack at the end, is that the queer community, especially in America, has for very long been um uh especially gay men have been thrown into this prejudiced notion that gay people are predatory, and that you need to hide your
Yeah.
kids from gay people. And that still exists today. It existed at the very
Yeah.
onset of even speaking the word homosexual in society. It was protect your kids from gay men. Um, and it still exists today. If you think about like drag brunches getting banned, or don't say gay bills being passed, or book
Mhm.
bans banning, any book that has any slight um, LGBT theme in it, right? It's all this like right wing, uber fundamentalist, like protect the kids narrative that is being thrown at us, often prejudicely, and it's not an accurate depiction at all of what goes on in the queer community. And even if it was, um, I I feel like there have been so many more records of just like child predation in the straight community.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no kind of reciprocation of recognizing that. And so I argue that this film, unfortunately, in trying to beautify the queer experience, actually kind of acts as a weapon that right-wing fundamentalists can
Mm.
use against us. Like it kind of it unfortunately gives in to preconceived problematic notions of what
Mm.
modern queerness is. It did not mean to. Obviously, the film director is gay. It's a gay man. It's a gay story. It's supposed to beautify on the film screen and try to normalize more. Um, Queer lovemaking, yes, and I do recognize that. So I'm not like canceling the film. I made it very clear in my thesis that I was not doing that. But I do think it's a bit of a cautionary tale, and it's a little unfortunate that it is upholding um, these negative ideas of how we want to be portrayed in media. Like,
Yeah.
come on, we can do better. Um, so that's my biggest work to date, and I presented at several conference. I think I did 6 conferences with that bitch, which is not. Yeah,
Wow.
you don't do that. You do like two max on a paper, but that's just kind of my only paper right now because I'm still
You're
fresh in this. I
baby.
am I
Yeah.
am baby. So I applied to a lot of conferences and it got accepted to a lot. So I presented at NYU last May, which was pretty cool. That was my first time ever in New York. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
And yeah, and it is being published in like a queer academia journal, like a really small, just online only kind of journal. It's not really a big deal, but there is technically like a peer review
It's a big
process.
deal.
Yeah, I mean it's a big deal because it was my first one, so I'm excited. I'm very grateful for that. So yeah, it has taken me far. Um, so yeah. Um, Another project that I worked on uh, that is not essay related is I transcribed a piece of music by an old dude. And it was actually just performed last week for the first time since like 1790.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I studied abroad. I took out like a 20K loan so that I could study abroad in
Nice.
undergrad because I didn't have the money to do that. But I was like, when am I going to have the opportunity to do this again? So I studied abroad in undergrad in Vienna, and I did this musicology like mentorship with an English speaking musicologist in Vienna who was actually a Texan. He graduated from Baylor. Um,
Oh.
yeah, I know. He is German culture obsessed, and he is a Beethoven scholar, one of the leading Beethoven scholars, and
Mm.
moved his whole life to Austria and married a Lithuanian woman, and now has like 5 German speaking kids as their primary language. It's really cool. Um,
That is cool.
so yeah, I got paired with him, and like on the first day, he was basically like, "What do you know about musicology, and what do you not? What experiences do you not have?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really do a lot with actual music. So much musicology is just humanities, like writing essays and listening to music." I
Mm.
was like, I don't really play much anymore. I've never arranged, I've never transcribed, I've never composed in my life. Like, I don't do much with actual music. And he was like, that's amazing. That's great. I have a stack of um, pieces of music from like the 1700s that have never made it into publishing, that have only been found in recent decades that need to be transcribed into modern notation systems, sold to a publisher so that they can have their modern premieres in modern society so that people can actually hear them for the first time in 300 years. And he was like, pick one from the stack. And he like pointed to a shelf and I picked the one on top. And yeah, so we worked on that for the entire semester, that entire summer. We stopped for a year just because it was more of an exercise and less like a practical, like he needed that to actually
Mm-hmm.
sell, to actually make money. It was more just like a professional development kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I never finished it after I got back from Vienna. I only studied abroad in Vienna for 4 months. And then I worked on it the summer that I was back home as well. So I think I worked on it for maybe like 5 months total. And then we kind of just stopped talking. I mean, he's on the other side of the world. And then in like June last year, he sends me an email and he's like, Guten Tag. Um, this publisher is interested in buying all of my transcriptions of Rika. That is the composer Anton Rika. Um, Not very big back in his day, but he was the teacher of Berlioz and several others. I mean, everyone had a lesson with Rika at some point. Rika was known more for being a composition teacher as opposed to like a composer himself. So everyone knew Rika back in his day, but Rika was not like Beethoven, but in the same circles for
Right.
sure. And he was like, yeah, this publisher wants to buy all of my Rika stuff, and the Munich Radio Symphony Orchestra is going to be doing a bunch of recording sessions over the next year, like three different ones. They're not even concerts, they're just recording sessions to get the music out onto like streaming services just so that we can listen to these things. Um,
Mm.
because there is a lot of stuff that Rika did, but no one knows who Rika is because his stuff was never published. And he was like, "Do you want to resume?" Well, actually, he didn't even ask if I wanted to resume the project. He basically implied, like, I need you to start working on this. And I wanted to. The catch is that it was all free labor. I probably put between 100 and 200 hours into this damn thing, and it was all free labor.
Wow.
It took all last summer and then all this past fall as well, because um, um, it's there's like it's a whole industry of like um, I don't know, you have to look at the music. There's scans, so I'm not dealing anything with any like very valuable rare documents like in my hand. Like I'm looking at like printer scans of the actual old documents,
Mm-hmm.
just by the way. But you have to look at every tiny little marking on every page and try to reckon what it is, whether it's like the flick of a wrist, like a mistake, or um, did it mean something? And you have to familiarize
Mm.
yourself so much with the piece itself, but also all the other pieces that this composer has done to try to learn their mind and their tendencies. So that you can produce what you think as a transcriber is what the composer meant to like the
That is
truest
so
extent.
cool.
It is really cool. It's also so tedious, and I like that because I'm
Yeah.
OCD, but I don't like not getting paid
Do
for
you?
that.
Yeah.
I
Do you have
do.
OCD or are you saying it like
No,
colloquially?
no, I do have OCD. Well, actually, I've never been diagnosed,
Oh my God.
but I've just,
Okay.
my parents have always told me ever since I was little. I think it's very obvious, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like a neat freak. Um, I'm very uptight as a person, and I think it's because of my OCD. But that's a whole other thing that I'm going to therapy now for. You'll be proud of me.
Hey, period.
First one was yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to. I like just vomited all over the therapist yesterday, and then I
Oh, yeah.
apologize. Yeah. Um,
Well, that's how it goes. That's what you're supposed to do.
yeah. No, but I really liked this project a lot. The piece
Mm-hmm.
itself was kind of mid. It was really campy. It was all arpeggios. It's classical
Yeah.
era, like late classical era,
Right.
so 1792. So not my favorite shit by any
Can we
means.
listen to it on like Spotify now?
No, it just got performed for the first time like literally a week ago. So it'll take a
Oh,
couple
okay.
months. I think later this year, Munich
Okay.
Symphony will be releasing those recordings on a CD or LP or something.
Okay.
So
Will
no,
you send it
I
to me so I can put it in the
yes,
description?
yes, I can. You can even open the podcast with the Muse score audio file if you
Oh, I would
want.
love to do that.
Yeah, and everyone
Yes.
listening, y'all will be like some of the first people alive hearing it.
Oh my God.
Which is really cool, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's cooler in thought than it actually is, because when you hear the piece, it's like, oh, this is just like textbook classical shit. Yeah, it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not all that, but it's
Well,
cute. I think it's campy. I think it's kind of pastiche a little bit. I think it
mm,
uses arpeggios so much that it's kind of
Wait,
actually, do I?
what is it? Pastiche?
Pastiche? Is
Oh,
it,
plastiche.
no, is it
Like,
pastiche or pastiche? Pastiche.
I don't know.
It's
I
like
don't know what that word
it's a
means.
French it just means like when you're leaning into something to like be something else. Like I don't think his use of arpeggios like throughout the entire 14-minute overture is like him actually being so deeply rooted in the classical tradition. I think it's him leaning into it to try to like evoke a different time period.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That makes
So
sense.
he's being silly with it because there will be some moments where there's kind of a complex like harmonic thing that happens, and I'm like, whoa, that or like there will be like really chromatic moments just out of nowhere, and I'm like, oh, like
mm.
I can taste the romantic era like coming,
Coming,
it's like
yeah.
20, 30 years away from when he's composing this. So yeah, that's kind of why I think it might not be quite what it sounds like, but we don't know because we don't have writings on it or what the composer thought of it. So we'll never know. But yeah, so I did that. And that is another thing that you can do in musicology that is not like writing papers um
Yeah.
on your couch. It's more archival. Um it was yeah, I mean, archives are crazy. Even organized archives like the archive at UT Austin or the archive, just any archive. Just because things are at an archive does not mean that the people at the archives have um, gone through everything in the said archive and know what is
Mm.
all there. So there's always stuff being discovered in archives. I don't, did you hear about that like new Mozart piece that was discovered last year?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
all in the news is like Mozart, new piece discovered by Mozart, never heard before, and then there's
New
like a
Mozart just dropped.
yeah, new Mozart just dropped. People are like new Mozart just dropped before GTA 6 or whatever, like the yeah, whatever
Yeah.
the memes are before Rihanna dropped it,
Mhm.
what literally
Yeah.
whoever, but um that's because there's just so much shit laying around that people don't know is laying around, and sometimes it just takes like a curious person exploring an archive one day to be like, "What's this?" It's not filed, like there's not a sticker on it with you know,
Yeah.
it's not indexed is the right word, and then people will be like, "Oh shit, we didn't see that." Happens all the time. Or what will happen is like in Europe, a bunch of old people will die, and then like everything in their basement will like get handed to like a
Right,
library or
yeah.
something. Or I said basement. It's mainly attics
Yeah.
in Europe, I think. But yeah. So there's always just shit laying around that needs to um,
There's always shit lying around, period.
yeah. So that's a very different career path in musicology than being a writer for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that was a cool thing that I did. I don't know if I will do again. Um,
Well, and now tell me about your recent essay that you're working on.
oh yeah. Okay. So, man, I'm a yapper. I'm so sorry. Um,
Why? That's the point. That's the
I guess it
point.
is the point. I just feel gross. I'm like, I don't matter for
You
two
matter
hours
so
worth.
much.
Thank you so
Girl,
much.
the way that my own episode is the longest one. I'm like, okay, well, I have a lot to say.
I mean, okay, no, no, you're right. You're right. That is the point of this. It's beautiful, and we're passionate, and it's people we know. So
Yeah.
you're right. Hold on.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
we're
take
almost
a
to the
sip
end
of water.
anyway. Okay, please.
Okay.
Oh, yum. Heard all of that.
Did you hear that little that little water gurgle?
Yeah, do you want to hear me do it?
Oh, go for it. Oh, that was really smooth and fast.
Oh, well, I just took like a little sip.
Oh, just a little sip. I could tell. Maybe
I'm just dainty.
I'll write my dissertation on that, actually. The sounds of here, I'll do it again.
People drinking water.
It's beautiful, right? It's really stunning. It's stunning work. Okay.
Beauty.
So my most recent essay, which is very rough and needs uh some work, but all of the main
I
ideas are
think it's
still there.
beautiful.
Thank you. Did you? Oh, I forgot to ask you. Did you read it and understand it?
I'm in the middle of it.
Okay.
Um,
It's
yeah.
really it's dense. I don't know how to make it less dense, but it's pretty dense. It's very
I
philosophical and like theory based.
I really was I really like it so far. I mean, like, I don't know, there was I might read like in the intro like some of the opening paragraph if that's okay because
Oh yeah, go for it.
I don't know, I feel like it describes you really well.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I don't know, your writing style and it's just so I really like it
Thank you.
actually.
I appreciate it. I always find it
Yeah,
funny because I write in the way that I hate to read, and I don't know what to do about it. But I will as a grad student, I have like reading assignments like every class. I'm always reading this bullshit that's so fluffy and like so you could just tell that they're so into themselves. And I'm like, ah, I hate this shit. Just like tell me the main points, make it clear, get to the point. And then I sit down to write, and it's like it's everything that I hate to read. The abuse becomes the abuser. And
well, I guess I'm someone who likes to read that stuff.
well, thank you. I appreciate
Maybe
that.
not in like academic text, but
Hmm.
well, well, I guess yours are academic, but they're interesting to me. I
Yeah,
feel like a lot of the stuff I had to read for class was not interesting to me,
I,
even though it was academic.
thank you. I
Anyway.
appreciate the compliments. One, I think what makes it a little bit different is because I really only try to write and expend energy and vomit words out on things that are really personal to me. And I intertwine that personal component in all of my writing. So like the opening of my Call Me by Your Name
Mm-hmm.
essay uh was was like a retelling of how I first became acquainted with the film, how I was sitting on the couch with my mom watching the Oscars, and I watched Sufjan Stevens sing Mystery of Love at the Oscars.
Hmm.
And that was how I first became aware that the film existed. I was a junior in high school. So I like set the scene and I make very
Yeah.
clear the personal stakes that are involved and why it matters to me, if nothing else, is essentially what I'm doing.
See,
Um,
I feel like that's what makes it interesting is like because I don't know, like we were talking about earlier, like thousands of music students trying to recreate like the exact perfect horn line of
mm,
is less interesting than each of those people's individual stories.
mhm.
And I think like it's harder to share that. And especially like the stuff you share, like your like queer identity and stuff is very vulnerable.
Mhm.
And I just appreciate that about you because I mean I try to do that too with my art. Like my songs are very personal because to me I'm like why do I care about something I've already heard before?
Mhm.
You know, the thing that is unique about you is something that we, the reader, hasn't haven't heard before. You know, and that's what makes it worth reading.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I guess I never thought about it like that. But it is that personal aspect that um makes it different from others and I guess more interesting to read. Um, I'd never actually, someone just told me the other day that they liked that I started my Call Me by Your Name essay with a little kind of like memoir-esque sort of
Mm-hmm.
introduction. And I was actually thinking about like not. including that in my when it gets published, because I was like, who cares? Like, this is my first thing that I'm ever writing. I am like, I was 22 years old when I wrote it. Like, I guess my perception is that people can only do that if they're established in the field and they have a name. Like, I can name like the musicologist that I aspired to, because they are a name and they have written a lot of stuff.
Mm,
And so I have this sort of toxic ideal in my head that you can only write about yourself if people know who you are. And so I was
mm,
thinking about not including that because I was like, who cares? No one knows my name. But that's just my toxic music trained brain, comparison
yeah.
centric brain, speaking there. But thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm,
Yeah, it's also just I go all in on everything that I do. Um, I put all heart and soul into everything, and I'm not willing to do that for things that I'm not 100% like uh, fully sold on, but also feel very emotionally um, moved by or tied to. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what started this essay. It's called Hill Country Gay Boy. I think the subtitle is uh, Musical Topophilia, Queerness, and Embodiment in the Music of Sufjan Stevens. So those are all fancy schmancy words that I'll explain here in a second. But Sufjan
mm.
Stevens is an American singer-songwriter who probably everyone has had heard at least one song before, but might not know that they have been acquainted with Sufjan
Mhm.
Stevens. He's kind of a recluse. He's very underrepresented in terms of like early 2000s, and even today he's still releasing music, kind of folk indie idioms. But yeah, his output is crazy. He has like, I believe, over a dozen albums on a
Mm.
whole like gamut of different genres. So he's done the indie thing. He's done the electronic, just completely bonkers, like avant-garde thing. He's done meditation music. He wrote an original song for Call Me by Your Name, and it was nominated for an Oscar. So he's an Oscar-nominated songwriter. He's done film scoring for like short film media. He's done a ballet. He's done piano etudes. He's done like four Christmas albums. Um,
Mm.
he just really can do it all. And I love him. He is my like favorite musical. He's my lifelong musical muse. And I
Mm.
I want to be musicology's first Sufjan Stevens scholars because we don't have one.
Aw.
There's only a couple things written on him. He is getting more popular today. um, More and more people I am finding have heard of him in the musicology sphere, but no one has written on him extensively. There's not like a designated person who is the scholar on him. Like there
Mm.
is, Mozart, Beethoven, or kind of like how I was talking about my film professor. She is the La La Land scholar. Like we kind of like we
Yeah.
give superlatives out very freely to the people that have done the most work or what we deem the best work on XYZ movie or music genre or composer or whatever, like in this field.
Mhm.
And there's just not one for him, and I want to be that. So that's sort of my goal. But yeah, I so the essay is an auto ethnographic um exploration of what happens when I listen to Sufjan Stevens, specifically when I'm driving in my car through Texas. So
Mm.
very niche, very like, why does this matter? This is just you being crazy, like,
See, but like, I don't know because that's like the whole point of this podcast is like such like micro things. Like
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Like, cause I mean, we like celebrities and experts in the field and stuff, but I feel like people really care the most about the people they know.
Hmm.
And I think like your writing gives that energy of like, I am like a boy in Texas who drives and listens to my favorite artist, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
And I think like that's relatable to people, even if like they're not from Texas, because it's just the idea of like driving and listening it, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it could be
I don't know if that
applicable
makes
under.
sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely could be applicable in other places with different artists as well. And yeah, yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Um, no, thank you. I will stop self-bashing
Yes.
um,
Thank you.
so that
Good
you
Lord.
don't have to keep doing that. But thank you. I appreciate the compliments always.
Oh my God.
Um, but yeah, so I've grown up my whole life in Texas. Um, and I hated Texas as a kid, and even throughout most of high school. It wasn't until I graduated high school and excuse me, I just burped. That was
Ew.
yeah, I'm so sorry about that.
We'll
Um,
cut that out.
yes, please do. Um, I Okay, I guess even before this, I grew up in a big family, like very middle class. Um, and we did not travel a lot or go on vacations. So I think by age 19, I had been to two states and never out of the country, which is fine. But I just, you know, that's not everyone's case. By 19, a lot of my friends have been to a lot of places. So I was always obsessed ever since I was little with geography, culture, different places, faraway places, um, different ways of life, different ways of thinking, um, and especially different land, like physical lands. Like, I grew up in East Texas, so I grew up with the swamp people and the forest people, and like mountains to me are just crazy. They still are. They're my favorite thing in the world because I did not grow up with them. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've just always had this like fantasy that I can go to faraway places and just like see the world and experience new things to me. Obviously, that's a very privileged fantasy and there's a lot of ethical implications. But as like a high schooler, that's kind of what I wanted to do. And before I decided on doing music education, I wanted to be a geographer or a geologist or something. And so, anyways, my sister always noticed that, and her gift to me after I graduated high school was a 2-week road trip around Texas, which
Mm.
was really sweet. It was honestly life changing because I thought I had always hated Texas, but I'd really never been anywhere in Texas. Texas is so massive. It's 19 hours from one side to the other, latitudinally and longitudinally, both ways. It's like
Mm.
19 hours. It's crazy. And Houston is in the corner. So I mean, I'd only been to San Antonio for band trips. I'd been to Austin twice for like a day trip. I had never been to Dallas. I had never been to the Panhandle. I'd never been to the desert, never seen mountains in my life. Um, so I thought I hated Texas from what I knew. And my
Mm.
sister took me on this 2-week road trip and we went camping around all of Texas. We made like a big circle. We did a mix of cities and then state parks, and then we also did Big Bend and Guadalupe National Parks in West Texas. And I think that was like sort of life changing because all of a sudden I had to grapple with the fact that I kind of loved Texas. Texas was very diverse and beautiful, and there was so much in my backyard that I had no idea, and that I don't even think my friends had no any idea about. That's another thing. I don't think a lot of Texans know what is all in Texas, but that's a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so then all of a sudden I became this like camp, hiking, junkie, and I am like still to this day, like ever since that summer, 5, 6 years ago now, I'm always planning some camping or hiking trip. Like I'm going back to Big Bend this spring break. I'm gonna go run a half marathon in the Panhandle in April in Caprock Canyons. Like I just love it. And but it's always been kind of bittersweet because I love the land physically and the diversity and just that you can drive in one direction for hours and you just see like gradually all the trees go away and the desert kind of comes out of
Mhm.
nowhere and the mountains come out of nowhere. Like I just love that. But I really kind of can't stand the people sometimes or the politics sometimes of this state.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and a lot of my queer identity has been grappling with like my environment more than self-acceptance. Like I've known for a very long time. I really didn't actually have any issue with coming out to myself, believe it or not. It was just my masculinity and my self-expression to others that I've always had issues with, not just the sexuality part of it, but like everything else that becomes involved with that. Um,
Mm.
and I discovered Sufjan Stevens later in high school, and um, he has kind of accompanied me on several of these trips where either I'm on a road trip with other people or I'm driving by myself in the middle of nowhere. And he has allowed me to fall in love with my surroundings, even if I don't necessarily feel like otherwise I would be welcomed or that I could have a future in XYZ middle of nowhere place in Texas. And it's
Mm.
through his music and the fact that he uses so many folk music idioms in his music
Yeah.
that I have like erected these fantasies in my head that I almost in a way am Sufjan Stevens making these like folk music uh songs that kind of like v- um they work with the kind of uh middle of nowhere Texas aesthetic, like the folk music, like they pair well together actually. Just
Mhm.
folk music and hiking or in
Yeah.
West Texas, the Wild West, like they kind of go hand in hand. They supplement each other, or like what we've been told, the Wild West sounds like, that sort of thing. Whether or not they actually
Yeah.
do is a whole other thing. And in my essay, I talk about, I was like, well, if, I need to recognize that a natural music of this land would be Native American music, but that's a whole other thing. Um,
Yeah.
um, but his music and the embodiment of queerness that I feel when listening to his music, specifically on these like escapades and like very nature oriented trips around Texas, just to go on a hike one day or go on a little road trip. Um, I've really shaped who I am as a person over the last like 4, 5, 6 years. Um, and they've made me hate Texas less. And I think that's really powerful. And
Mm.
basically, my essay is called Hill Country Gay Boy. Um, and I talk about how, in three specific examples, three specific songs have kind of allowed me to grow into my own skin better, but also into my environment better. It's helped me rationalize where I stand in regards to an otherwise unwelcoming environment that I live in every day. Um,
Mm.
and so it's kind of an exploration of that. It's very dense and theoretical. Like I use a lot of different theories, like topophilia is a theory. It's
Mhm.
it's the love of land, and like an
Yeah.
emotional connection to land. That's topophilia. And then in the last couple of years, someone a big scholar wrote on the phenomenon, or like pioneered the phenomenon of musical topophilia, which is
Mm.
the intersection of geography, emotions, and music, and how those can work together. And so I basically use, I believe it is a he. I think he, yeah, I use his theory of musical topophilia, um, to explain and reckon what I have gone through with, my emotionality with land, and how music has helped me connect better with land. And I even go as far as to say, even if Sufjan Stevens' music, like he was from the Midwest, he lived in Michigan and Illinois, and then moved to like Oregon, and now he lives in New York City. Like he has nothing to do with Texas, right? But it's this like kind of irrational, ahistorical, uh, almost like fantasy tendency that my brain has to be like, this music makes sense in this place, or this place is what this music would
Mm.
sound like, that I've able and and by extension, since I like this music and this music represents this place, I thus now like this place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 And that has
Wow.
and then I tie in a bunch of like identity politics and um yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, so that's my current project, which I think is really difficult. It's going to take me a while to finish that one. But
I'm excited to see how it turns out. I mean, I guess I'm not a musicologist, but to me it looks good.
thank you. I appreciate it. That's like newer musicology that people are doing today.
Hmm.
Really tying in the personal with your work, queer theory just at large, feminist theory, um, like musicology in the 19 like 50s, 60s, 70s was like the work of Beethoven. That could be an
Right, yeah.
article that you would see in the American Musicological Society's journal that they publish in print. It's very like
Yeah.
matter of fact. um and now today it's called well, people don't really use this term, but it's called new musicology, and it's basically putting it, or tying in a bunch of isms, feminism,
Hmm.
and just different, critical theory, race theory, and how that intersects with music, um, in various ways. So um, it's fun. I'm still looking for more ways to like actually make a difference, because again, like none of this, like it matters because it matters to me. I do recognize that that in itself doesn't need anything more to like vouch for it. Like I do matter, and what I write matters, but I think I have this like craving to, um, make more of an impact somehow. And I recognize that, probably hardly anyone will ever like read this essay. And even if they do, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily gonna like give back to society, or like the uh, queer community in America in any profound way. And I'm not trying to change the world, but I do kind of like want to do something. So that's just kind of what's on my
Hmm.
mind lately. That's been plaguing my mind, if you will.
Plaguing, yeah. I have
Plaguing.
a question that I didn't prep you for.
Oh, okay.
Um, what do you think of the ethnomusicologist in Inside Out 2?
Oh my, fuck that ethnomusicologist. Fuck that fucking ethnomusicologist. I love Inside Out. It's one of my favorite movies ever. I cried at that movie. Do you remember when I made y'all play Inside Out in piano class, and I made Dr. cry? Do you remember that?
Nope.
Damn.
So
Okay.
sorry.
Well, I love that fucking score so much. Again, I'm a big movie music guy, Michael Giacchino. I
Maybe
love it.
actually. Well, yeah.
That movie made me
Yeah.
cry as like a full-on adult. So I was so excited to see Inside Out 2. And I got insulted by that film twice.
Personally, they were like, you, Brandon.
They came for me.
You personally.
If you have not seen Inside Out 2, they make an ethnomusicologist joke twice in that film. She's like, Riley's like, "Oh my gosh, if I don't make the hockey team, like, I, I maybe I'll end up as an ethnomusicologist one day, and that would be miserable or terrible. I don't want that." And they make that joke twice, like an hour
They
apart.
sure do.
I was sitting in the theater with my
Yeah.
brother, and I just looked at him like jaw on the floor. He was laughing so fucking hard. He was like, "They came for you."
You personally. Like, that is so funny.
So of all the
Oh, man.
things, all the
Oh, my
things.
gosh.
I guess not like
Um,
quite me because I'm not an ethnomusicologist. I'm a
but like,
musicologist.
basically.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Bitch. I was like, I thought it was actually really funny though. I didn't take any offense to it. Like, actually, I just thought it was crazy. Like, what are the odds?
It was, yeah, it is very funny. I thought of you immediately when I saw that. I was like, oh my
I
God.
thought of me too. I was like, damn, this fucking sucks. I just paid to see this movie
Yeah, I
twice.
know. They should send you reparations. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, then I have one final question for you, which you may, because I think you've been listening to the show a little bit.
I do.
So you
No,
may
I
be
do.
kind of prepared for it.
Yes.
But I'm gonna repeat it. So, if you had to split your life into the before and the after, what moment does it switch? And how specific of a moment is it, like in time? Is it a year? Is it a second? And yeah.
I'm gonna be very boring and say that I think it's been happening for a couple years now, which is not the
Mm.
exciting answer or story that
Mm-hmm.
your listeners probably want to hear. Um, I don't have like a setting the scene sort of thing, but I think um, over the past couple years, I've been through a lot of ups and downs. Sounds very cliche, but a lot of like life altering
Mm-hmm. You
things.
sure have.
Yeah, yeah, you know all of them actually. You know all of them. And I feel like I I still think it's going on right now too. Um Maybe this is just because I'm an idealist, but I have this image of who I will be one day, and I think I'm slowly chipping away at that person. I'm
Mm.
slowly obtaining that. And I think by me being in grad school, studying what I want to study, being very fortunate to be paid by UT to support my studies so that I no longer have to work full-time waiter job at a restaurant is also very helpful in this like soul searching um, journey. Um, I really think it's been like the last like 2 years. I think since I left to study abroad, Vienna. And
Mm.
yeah, you remember that. That was a really rough semester for me. I mean, who studies abroad and comes back saying that they were depressed? Like, it's so embarrassing, but that was a really rough semester for me. Just because I was in my first relationship ever, and I was doing it long distance. We were only like 2 months in going into me studying abroad, but we were so infatuated with each other that we didn't want to put it on pause. So, within 8 weeks of me leaving the country for the first time in my life, actually, I was all of a sudden in my first relationship ever and also a long distance relationship. And it was very difficult abroad. And then it got better when I came back, but only for a short period of time until it got bad again. I won't go into details of that, but I feel like with each new thing, I've slowly learned a really valuable life lesson that is kind of forwarding me to who I want to become and things that I would have needed to eventually learn to become this kind of person I have in my head. So that's why I say it's a years long thing and not like a,
Hmm.
unfortunately, there's no satisfaction of like a minute or second or day. Um,
Hmm.
that would be lovely. Um,
Life's a little more complicated than
it
that
is more
sometimes.
complicated, and I think I'm just really slow. I'm pretty stubborn, so I like to push back on change, and then it's not really until the last minute that I'm like, okay, this is what has to happen, or this is what is happening, or so I think that's also why it's such a prolonged thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say since 2023, so about 2 years to the date actually is when I um first did that. So over the last 2 years, there's a number at least. At the very least, there's a number. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm. What is this person that you're going to be someday?
this person is someone that is like 100% happy with who they are, and kind of does not get caught up on like kind of deeply rooted, internalized like homophobia or um, perceptions of, what a man should be in society and shit like that. Um,
Mm.
this person that I'm trying to be and I want to be one day is free from the chains of that, um, and really has broken out of like uh, a mindset that tends to hold him back, I think.
Mm.
I think that is what I am like learning about myself. I'm like very in my head, I'm very heady. And
Hmm.
for better or for worse, because I have really
Me
good
too.
thoughts, but I also have really not good thoughts.
Me too.
Yeah. It's
That's what I mean.
crazy that I now just started therapy for the first time, literally yesterday. I should have been doing this for years. Um, I was also kind of stubborn to that idea. I was in denial that I needed therapy because I didn't actually have like any one traumatic event that happened in my life. Well, until this past year, and you know about that. But
Yeah.
I was like, oh, like, little things, but like nothing that I need to pay a therapist for. And then
Yeah.
finally, I was like, nah, I think everyone can benefit from therapy genuinely, and I need to do my part.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of why I feel like the after is still forming right now. I don't think I'm on the
Mm. You're
other.
still in the before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
still am in the before, but the after is near, and I think I'm doing the necessary
Mm.
things to obtain that and to be happier. And one of those things is being in grad school because I love school. If I could be a student forever, I would. Obviously, that's a privileged statement. School is expensive, but I've just always been a nerd, and by having the outlet to write about me and my musical experiences, is really helpful actually because I've made my job um, what I'm passionate about. And, they always say, like, make your job what you're passionate about so that it's not a job. I feel like I'm actually sort of doing that. and just kind of
Mm.
qualms that I have about life and identity and sexuality and people and society and human kind as a whole, spirituality, just things that I kind of want to figure out and conceptualize in my own head by the end of my life. I can now do that in my own academia, in my own job. So it's not like I have to put it on pause for like a 9 to 5
Mm.
and disassociate, and then I can resume it every day. It feels amplified now, I guess,
Yeah.
that I can think about these things all day, every day, and get paid by UT to do it.
Welcome.
Which is yeah, okay. So I think I'm still going through it. It's a very unsatisfying answer. I'm so sorry,
No,
but
that's lovely. Honestly, that's beautiful. And it's interesting to see somebody answer this question with such an active role in the before and the after, because a lot of people, and my own included, like the before and after moment is, something that happened to you.
mhm,
And I like this idea that like you are kind of in the driver's seat,
mhm.
making the after happen. I think that's really lovely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it doesn't make for as good of a story, but it
I
is
think it was.
it is. Thank you. I appreciate it. I will stop bashing myself.
uh,
That's I guess what I've learned in this episode.
in the after, you are no longer bashing yourself.
For sure.
Someday.
Someday soon.
Well, do you have any like, closing thoughts or messages for the people?
I'm sorry if you hate music after this episode. This was like really negative Nancy, but it's or like if you feel a little bit depressed about the world after this episode,
It's yeah, yeah.
but I don't know. I find peace in truth sometimes, and even if the truth is like not great to talk about because society is not great sometimes. Um, that does actually, in a weird, twisted, sick way, make me feel a little bit better because at least I'm not like running away from things, you know?
Yeah, no, I feel that.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm yeah, I, I like that idea. Mm.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. I hope we get you back to talk some more.
Yeah, I mean, we could do so many episodes. I don't know.
I
Um,
would love to do like a Texas band episode with
it
you
really is
because I know
crazy.
both of us could go in on that.
We could talk about our time at
Oh, yes, we sure could. Yes, we sure
our
could.
marching tech days. Our Xbox. You remember Xbox at
Yeah.
Leander?
Oh, do I? Do I have thoughts about that? Have I brought that up in several like interviews? Yes. Have I written about it? Yes.
It's
Uh-huh.
yeah, there's something that needs to be said about that. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Well, yeah.
I guess I will be
In
back.
the future.
Yeah,
Yay!
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.
All right, thank you so much.
So that was our episode on musicology. If you like this podcast, consider the relationship between music and various subjects, including geography, aesthetics, politics, race theory, gender theory, neuropsychology, and more. Or watch Inside Out 2 and laugh at the silly little ethnomusicologist. By the way, if you aren't already, you should join the Remind so that you can be reminded when new episodes are out. You can text @PeopleWK to 81010 to join. And be sent, Google Forms for when I'm crowdsourcing information and, reminders of when episodes are coming out. Okay, bye. That's it. Love you.